10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, my friends, and thank you so much for coming to spend part of your Saturday, January 6th with me. And for my Australian viewers, it is Sunday, January 7th. How is everyone today? Did anybody see me on Court TV last night? I know a lot of people couldn't find it. I have Fios, Verizon cable, and they took Court TV off the roster of channels that they carry, so I couldn't even watch it. It's on courttv.com, and sometimes they post them the next day on YouTube, but so far they have not posted it yet. So I'm going to play it for you. If you didn't see it, I'm going to play it because there were some fireworks. There were some fireworks on there. And a lot of people who did see it sent me messages and wrote nice comments, and they thought I did a great job. So I'm going to talk for a minute because a lot of people get ads when they tune into a live, so they have to sit through some commercials before they're allowed to watch me. Oh, it was a little tough to find, right? It was a little tough to find, Ed. Yeah. I had to send my mom the Court TV website because I knew that if she tried to use an app on her TV, she would never be able to do it or find it. So it was interesting. A little history on this. So on January 1st, which was New Year's Day, I was invited to be a guest on Profiling Evil with Mike King, who we all know and love. Mike has been on my show before, and this was the first time that he's done a live in a long time. He just retired. So he's going to start doing his choir practice again, which is going to be the first Monday of every month. He's going to have some guests on, and choir practice is kind of like, from what I gathered, it's the way law enforcement would describe happy hour. Like, oh, hey, I'll meet you at choir practice at 8 o'clock, instead of saying like going to the bar. But on the show, in addition to me, was Vinnie Politan, who I have been a fan of for over 20 years. And I've always found Vinnie very interesting to watch just because he's so passionate. He's so animated. He's got a lot of passion for what he does and a lot of energy. And so during that Profiling Evil episode, we had a little, we kind of went toe to toe, and we were talking about the cases that are coming up in 2024. And then Karen Reed came up, and then he started saying things like, and don't quote me, you can go back and watch it, but come on, like, is anybody really going to believe that all these people are setting her up and there's this huge conspiracy? And I looked at him, I said, Vinny, I'm from Long Island. Okay. We've been looking for a serial killer since 1996 that was not arrested because of all the police corruption here. So if you ever want to go toe to toe with me on Karen Reed, call me, basically. So that's pretty funny. So that was January 1st. So yesterday, I got a phone call from Vinny's producer, coincidentally, and she said, Melanie, Vinny would like you to come on the show tonight and talk about Karen Reed. And I thought, wow, like that was quick. So we did. There are so many emotions on either side of this case that it is getting crazy. It's getting crazy. There are protesters outside the courthouse, which is in Dedham, Mass. This is Norfolk County, Massachusetts. I am very familiar with Norfolk County, Massachusetts, but I am not related to Elizabeth Little, who is one of the defense attorneys in this case. So there is no relation between me, Melanie Little, and Elizabeth Little, who is on the defense team. Emotions are high on either side. And you guys know me, and you guys know that I am not a cupcake. There were some people who were posting in the Facebook group saying, somebody, I guess, reposted my announcement that I was going to be on Court TV. And somebody said, they were like bashing the fact that I call my viewers cupcakes. And here's why I call them cupcakes. You want to know? Here's a little info. There's a logo right here that says, I am not a cupcake. And the reason for that is that not only have I been an attorney for 30 years in New York, I'm a trial attorney, recovering attorney now because I pivoted to being a legal analyst and commentator, and apparently now I'm a YouTuber, but I'm also a mother of 5. So I have a sign that I've had for probably, 30 years that says, you can't make everyone happy. You are not a cupcake. So I am not a cupcake. But when I started my membership, my mods were saying we have to have a name for your members. What are we going to call your members? And I said, oh, let's call them Melanie's Little Cupcakes, because it's a play on words, and also because I'm not a cupcake. And so nobody really got it. Like, you're not a cupcake. Why are they cupcakes? Because I make them happy. They make me happy. So I guess to each other, we are cupcakes. This is not a neutral channel. If you want a neutral channel, there are plenty of channels that you can go to that have photo montages and videos that are just playing with some robotic voice that is going to tell you a narrative that they want you to hear. And it's going to be unbiased. And that's what, you're welcome to go do that. Please do not put in my comments like, you are so biased, you are so this. I don't care. It's my channel. I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about, and I talk about the tough topics, okay? Not only do I know corruption from the police level here on Long Island, but I know corruption from the inner workings of the Catholic Church. I handled the church cases on behalf of at least 50 or 60 victims of clergy SA. That's YouTube lingo that we have to use or we get stricken. Clergy SA here on Long Island against the Rockville Center Diocese. When that scandal broke in 2002, Suffolk County Grand Jury issued a scathing report that was about, I forget how many pages, 190 pages, all about the fraud and the cover-up and the corruption and the collusion that was going on for decades here on Long Island within our very own diocese. And unfortunately, despite that grand jury report, which was scathing, the movie Spotlight was made about these cases, which coincidentally also happened in Boston. That's where the scandal broke, was in Boston. And nobody was criminally prosecuted here in New York because at the time, New York was the most pedo-friendly state in the country. And if you could keep a child quiet long enough, you would never go to jail. Do not pass go, do not collect $200. So when I see other creators talking about this case on YouTube and they're saying, oh, it's ridiculous, everyone would have to believe that there's this huge conspiracy, blah, blah, blah. I believe it. I believe it's possible. And you know what? The defense doesn't need to prove anything. It's not their case to prove. This is the prosecution's case to prove. They have to prove that Karen Reed did this beyond a reasonable doubt. That is their burden. So there doesn't have to be a motive. There doesn't have to be a defense. But this case has blown up because of certain YouTubers that have been covering it. And we're not going to get into all the side drama because that's not what the show is about tonight. And this is not a drama channel. It's a legal-based channel. So I like to go through court documents. I'll go through the hearings with you. We'll discuss the case. We'll discuss the facts of the case. I don't want to get into speculation and wild theories. But this is a case that has gripped the nation's attention based on certain YouTubers that have been covering it. And I don't know if there's any lawyers covering it yet. So I've been following this behind the scenes for a long time. And I'm thinking, it's kind of explosive. I don't know if I want to get involved in it. And I just can't stay quiet any longer. I just can't. So no drama is why we love this channel. Thank you. Thank you, Patriot. Chat's moving quickly. Chat is moving quickly. The other thing is, for those of you that are new, and if you are following the Karen Reed channel and the Karen Reed saga, and you've never heard of me, I am Melanie Little. I am a recovering attorney from New York. I have been practicing law for 30 years in New York State and federal courts as a trial attorney. I am also a mother of 5, and I pivoted to now being a YouTuber and a legal analyst and commentator because like I was telling you about, those cases against the Catholic Church just sucked the soul out of me. And so it was time for me to pivot and do something different. So here I am for you today. I have the best moderators on YouTube. I don't tolerate bullying. I don't tolerate the cursey words, and I don't tolerate any personal attacks against me, against my moderators, against anybody in my chat, or against even the people that we're going to watch on Court TV tonight. Because if somebody was trash talking me on another channel, I would certainly hope that the creator would delete those comments, because it has happened before, believe it or not. Not everybody loves me. And I get trash talked in comments all the time, and I don't have the power to delete them on other people's channels. So I have to be like, hey, you think you could delete that? Because it's kind of rude. And so that's it. Come into the chat, respectfully debate with each other. We have a very welcoming chat here, but we just do not tolerate the bullies and the trash talk and the cursey words. So if you are able to refrain from all of that, you are certainly welcome to, no curly words, yeah, to come in and respectfully debate with me. and we'll see where this goes. This could be explosive tonight, so I'd like all hands on deck. Moderators, be ready. Yes, this is a terrible tragedy. It is. And please like the video. Thank you, Paula, for saying that. Hello, my cupcake lady, Sherilyn. And Scott, thank you for being here, Scott. I'm going to need some professional retired law enforcement backup on this one. And as Paula says, please like the video because it does help the algorithm. And listen, we need to get the word out. And the more likes we have, the more engagement we have, the more chat we have. Somehow there's a YouTube algorithm that helps push the video out and more people will see it. And isn't that the whole goal here? Justice for John O'Keefe. Isn't that why we are here? Justice for John O'Keefe. Back the blue. I back the blue 100%. 100%. And I want the right person, whoever that is, to be convicted for his death. And we can talk about it, and we can talk about the facts, and we can talk about what the defense has, and we can talk about what the prosecution has, and we're going to make our own determinations as if we were a jury. And trust me, there's a lot of stuff we don't know yet. A lot of stuff. But this case is crazy. And when I hear other creators saying, oh, it's impossible, there would have to be at least 100 people involved to make all this a huge concern. No, there wouldn't be. This is a small town. I know that there are a lot of people in the chat who know a lot more about this case than I do. I am not going to sit here and pretend to know every single detail about this case. But I have been following it. I've been reading all the court documents I can get my hands on because I am not a Massachusetts attorney, so I can't log into their system and get the documents easily like I can for every other case, like hundreds of Jeffrey Epstein documents that I paid for and downloaded the other day and have not covered yet. But blood is thicker than water. Just remember that. Blood is thicker than water. And I also come from New York where there are a lot of families in business, if you know what I mean. And a lot of people will do anything to protect their family. Just keep that in mind too. So here's where we're going with this. First thing I want to do is just show you a little clip of what I did last night. They have not posted the whole video. It was closing arguments with Vinnie Politan in the 8 o'clock hour. I'm just going to play a little portion of it. Jennifer Coffendorfer is on this episode too. And I know a lot of you know her from watching her on Police Off the Cuff and other shows. And please keep your personal feelings about her to yourself unless you can respectfully state them in the chat or in the comments. And yes, nothing I say here is legal advice. Thank you, Patronus Glow, for saying that. But we have a lot of fun here, and it's time that we took this case on from the top. So what I want to do is we're not really going to go from the top. We're going to kind of work backwards on this case because so many of you are so familiar with it. I'm going to show you a little segment of what I did on Court TV last night. I'm going to show you, they cut off the very end of it. So I want to tell you how I clapped back at Jennifer Coffendorfer at the end because you're not going to see that part. And then we are going to go to the motions hearing that was held yesterday. And we are going to kind of work backwards on this. So after we do the motions hearing, the judge rendered a decision yesterday in writing about turning over the electronic evidence. I'm going to tell you what that was. And then later tonight, or maybe tomorrow, I'm going to start from the beginning and we're going to go through the probable cause affidavit for Karen Read and why she was initially arrested and based on what evidence and how some of that evidence has come to be either bungled or disproven or mistakes were made, things like that, and how the charges were upgraded from vehicular manslaughter to murder. So this woman, Karen Read, is on trial for murder. The trial is starting, according to the judge, on March 12th. And apparently that's the day she wants it to start. So we have some time to catch up on this. Not a whole lot, but we have some. So for those of you, let's see. So a lot of these people are new to the case. Oh, thanks for loving my hair. I just want to say happy birthday to Arlene. Arlene said it's her birthday, so happy birthday, Arlene. She said she's so happy because I'm going live, and listen, if I can make everybody happier that easily, that would be amazing. Hey, Laura, thank you for your super chat. Once you've seen all the evidence that has been presented so far, there's really no way that you can prove to me beyond a reasonable doubt KR is guilty. TB really broke this. So glad we are covering. Yes, we're not going to talk about Turtle Boy tonight because that's not going to be relevant to what we're talking about, but I do give him a lot of credit for bringing this into the public eye. Unfortunately, I think he is still sitting in jail for 90 days. So we can get to all of that later, but let's take a look at Court TV last night for those of you who didn't see it. And then we're going to go to the hearing from yesterday. And I'm thinking, since a lot of you do not know this case, I was going to start here, but this is only 5 minutes. So let's start from the beginning, and you can hear Vinny. You're going to hear Vinny give a little bit of background on it. Just let me know that you can hear this.
Do so. Trooper Proctor had no...
And it kind of starts like in the middle here. It's kind of weird. Okay, here we go.
Michael Proctor, the state police trooper, being accused of planting evidence outside 34 Fairview Road, was never at Fairview Road on the day of the incident. Proctor and his state police partner traveled together the entire day while other officers were processing 34 Fairview.
That turns out to be a lie. This is the district attorney for Norfolk County. That turns out to be a lie based on police logs and police reports. So the fact that he got out there and said this blatant lie, I don't know what to make of it. What say you, my friends? What say you?
Trooper Proctor was not there and did not plant evidence at 34 Fairview Road. In addition to having no opportunity to plant the evidence, as has been suggested, Proctor would have no motive to do so. Trooper Proctor had no close personal relationship with any of the parties involved in the investigation and had no conflict.
That is also being debated right now because photographs are surfacing of this trooper, Michael Proctor, who is the lead investigator in this case for the Massachusetts State Police, and members of the family who owned the house, which John O'Keefe was found on the lawn of. So it runs deep, my friends. It runs deep. We'll try not to get sidetracked, but you know we always do.
And he had no reason to step out of this investigation. Every suggestion to the contrary is a lie.
That's the Norfolk County DA, the one who's in charge of the prosecution of Karen Reed. A public video that was released, very unusual, but again, this is a very unusual case in what's been happening. And there's been this groundswell up there in Canton and in the area, and there's been fingers pointed at people, including this Trooper Proctor. And you heard the DA say, listen, he didn't plant evidence, he wasn't even there, and he's not connected to anyone that was in the house or any of the parties involved here. Well, the defense is saying something completely different. But let's begin by taking a look at the Commonwealth's statement of the case. Okay, so this is from the prosecution side. They say in this, Trooper Michael Proctor and Sergeant Yuri Buchanek were among the troopers whom responded to the scene and began interviewing witnesses. So this trooper, very important part of the defense case, according to the Commonwealth's statement of the case, was there.
So which was it, DA? Which was it? He wasn't there, he was never there, or he was there? Now he was there, then he wasn't there. Pay attention, guys, because it gets crazy.
Then today in court, Alan Jackson went a little further to outline evidence that he believes shows that Trooper Proctor's and his family is connected to the parties involved here. Take a listen.
We've established that there is a close personal relationship between and among Michael Proctor and obviously Elizabeth Proctor and these third-party culprits that have been implicated in this case that we've brought to the court's attention, the Alberts and the McCabe's. So he calls the evidence that we've procured and that we've presented to the court as lies. Well, let's look at those lies for a quick second. We have presented the court with photographic evidence, not something that we came up with, something they came up with. Photographs in Exhibit C in our moving papers. And I'll just cover a couple of those. There's a photograph that we presented that shows Trooper Proctor's mother, the person by the name of Colin Albert, pictured in the photograph, with Trooper Proctor's sister pictured in the photograph, with Chris Albert pictured in the photograph, and with Jennifer McCabe's own daughter depicted in the photograph. They're all together at a birthday party. These are close and immediate family members of the Proctor family, the Albert family, and the McCabe family, and they're all together and they're socializing. That's not a lie. It's a photograph. And it's unassailable evidence of that relationship. There's a second photograph of Trooper Proctor and Colin Albert in a wedding party together. And I would urge the court to note, they're not at a wedding together. They're in a wedding together, in the wedding party.
Okay, so we're going to catch up on all of this when we go to the actual court hearing. So I'm just going to speed this up a little bit because we are going to watch that. Let's go back to what Vinny has to say.
Visually, because he's throwing a lot of names out there and it's a little confusing. So I want to make it a little less confusing. So the Proctors are.
Okay, I'm going to point out from jump that this family tree that Court TV does is not 100% accurate. There are people left off of this. So it's a good start, but there are some other people who were in the house who are not mentioned on this family tree. So we will talk about that later.
That's the trooper. But what is his connection to the Alberts and the McCabes, et cetera? But who are these people? So this is the house where John O'Keefe was found dead on the lawn, okay? The owners of the house are Brian Albert and Nicole Albert. They are married. Now, Brian Albert has a brother named Chris who's married to Julie. They have a son named Colin. So Colin is an important name in all of this. Chris, Julie, again, brother of Brian Albert. Brian Albert and Nicole, they have children, Caitlin Albert, Brian Albert Jr., and then there's a friend of theirs, Julie Nagel. Then you look at Nicole.
Shiraz, this makes the Murdochs look like, like connect the dots easy. So Shiraz, it sounds like this is going to give South Carolina some competition. 100%.
Nicole Albert, her sister, another important name in all this, Jennifer McCabe. Jennifer McCabe, who's married to Matt McCabe. So this is the house. So the night that John O'Keefe got out of the car in front of the house and either went to the party or was murdered or run over by Karen Reed, who was in the house? Take a look. This is what's alleged here. Brian Albert's there. Nicole is there. Chris and Julie are not there, but their son, Colin, is there, which is Brian's nephew. Their kids are there. Brian Albert Jr., Caitlin, and their friend Julie. Also there, very significant, is Jennifer McCabe and Matt McCabe. All of this.
Okay, Linda Vergata, they do not all live there. This was like an after party after they were out drinking at a bar. This is the home of Brian and Nicole Albert. Brian is a police officer, a police chief with the Boston PD. And Jennifer McCabe is going to be a big player in this as a witness. And Colin Albert may also be a big player in this. There are some friends missing, some other friends. I believe there are 2 other girls that were there at the time. And there was a man by the name of Brian Higgins, I believe, who was an ATF agent who also had an office in the Canton Police Department building. So just keep that in mind as we go through. If I misstate anything, feel free to correct me kindly in the chat. Thank you.
Trying to understand the names, the relationships, and does it all lead to some conspiracy, bias, framing, planning evidence? Let's bring in our guests. Joining us in New York City, attorney, podcaster Melanie Little is with us. In Boston, Massachusetts, criminal defense attorney and author of the books Super Predators and Law and the Tough on Crime Myth, Peter Ellikin is with us. And down in beautiful Jacksonville, Florida, retired FBI Special Agent Jennifer Koffendorfer. Great to have everyone here. All right, Melanie, I'll begin with you. So is the defense really predicated on the fact that Trooper Proctor, who was at a wedding and his family is close with the Alberts, is literally planting evidence to literally frame Karen Reed for murder? Is that what the defense is saying here, Melanie?
I think that's exactly what they're saying. And they're also saying that there are a lot of questions of fact here. If Trooper Proctor, who was the lead investigator.
I hate to interrupt you. I just want to preface our entire conversation tonight. I'm not concerned about reasonable doubt, okay? Reasonable doubt, that's
My mother said after the stream, she said, "I'm so mad that Vinny interrupted you." I said, "No, it didn't bother me. I know Vinny. He wasn't trying to be mean or anything, but it was totally fine with me. Don't get mad at Vinny. Don't get mad at Vinny. Totally fine." He says he's looking for the truth, but listen, there's always at least 3 sides to every story. So he said to me before the show, they texted me and said, "Melanie, do not be afraid to speak up." And to go, toe to toe with the other guests. And I just laughed. I said, well, he knows exactly that I will do that. So I am not afraid.
I want to know about the truth tonight, because the defense is saying John O'Keefe was murdered by people in that house, and the prosecution saying he was murdered by Karen Reed. So I want to look at these as 2 cases and evaluate what's going on here. Let's begin with the defense case. So Melanie, go ahead. I'm sorry I interrupted you. But I understand this is a case that's going to be tough with reasonable doubt. But I want to get to the truth tonight. So what do you see in terms of these relationships? Is that enough? Like someone would do this? Frame this woman?
Well, I can't see why anybody would find it so beyond the pale that it could never actually happen. I mean, if it is true that Michael Proctor, who's the lead investigator on this case, has close ties to the Albert family and to the McCabe family, everyone inside that house was a relative except for one person. So if the defense can show that there are close second family type ties between everyone in that house. I just wanted to stop it because I wanted to correct myself. There were a couple of other people in the house who were not related. So listen, live TV, it's hard. I'm going to make another blunder, but it's live TV. It's hard. You get a lot of cases in your head, and you don't get the questions in advance, by the way. You don't know what they're going to ask you. So give me a little bit of a break on this. Family. Everyone inside that house was a relative except for one person. So if the defense can show that there are close second family type ties between everyone in that house and the lead investigator on this case, that could be something that definitely could lead to reasonable doubt. I know you don't want to go there, but
yeah,
that's exactly
again, I'm not concerned about the reasonable doubt tonight. Not tonight. When we get to the trial, I'll get to it. I'm trying to figure out the truth here, Peter, because I've got Alan Jackson, a former prosecutor who was amazing out in California, jumping up and down literally on the courtroom steps, telling us that the prosecution has it all wrong. The DA has this all wrong, and that it's the police who are responsible here.
Well, yeah, first of all, I'd say that there was such a conflict of interest here. Even the appearance of bias, I don't know why Trooper Proctor was in charge of this investigation. There's just too many times we saw that we just.
Well, the defense is saying he's in charge because he's framing Karen Reed. That's why. He's not going to give up the lead on this because he's got to save, his friend and his friend's son and whoever else they're going to allege did this and frame somebody for this.
Yeah, and I guess that's. I think we've all been seeing enough cases over the years that it's not absolutely beyond the pale that some police officer may not be truthful. So
wait, there's a difference, though. This is a difference between not being truthful, forgetting something, and literally taking evidence and putting it somewhere so you can frame someone for murder, take away their liberty, and put them in jail for the rest of their life. This is different than just making a mistake.
Do that to protect a friend, though, or your long-term friends with the family? We saw it goes way, way back, and his mother is saying that the Alberts are a second family to her, and we have one of the family members, Jennifer McCabe, going to his house. Who goes to a state trooper's whole personal home to go chat with them, and it's not even reported in any paperwork. So with those.
Another interesting, curious fact that one of the witnesses would go to Proctor's house. It was never reported. Have an off-the-record maybe conversation, maybe.
Kinds of biased ties. Would there be a motive? Could anybody do that to protect their friends, to protect people you've known for years? And that's why when the DA here has said that it's a lie if you see any connection between him and the family, the facts just don't bear that out.
Yeah, that was baffling. And I'm glad you mentioned that. Let's take a listen to Alan Jackson today talking about that meeting on September 25th of last year.
On September 25th, 2023, that one of those family members, Jennifer McCabe, was the subject of great interest in this case and a primary person of interest in this case is invited to Trooper Proctor's personal home for some sort of off-the-books meeting. They've now admitted that Jennifer McCabe, a central character in the middle of this investigation, in the middle of this crime, was secretly meeting and or socializing with the lead investigator and or his wife in the living room of their home. And that, Your Honor, is a problem.
Okay, Jennifer, let me ask you, should we be concerned, when I say we, the public, that the DA comes out and says there's no relationship with the family here. Proctor had nothing to do with what was going on that day. And it seems that that's not necessarily true. And then McCabe going to Proctor's house. I mean, should there be some concern here?
Okay, let's just put up a trigger warning for what is about to be said here. You can see where the chat is going on this. So I'm just going to trigger warn you if you haven't seen this.
I think it's very important to truly understand the relationship. Brian Albert, who lived in the house where this incident occurred out in the front, his brother's wife's sister was friends with Proctor's sister. Okay, that's how far removed. I just hope your audience, the attorneys that are present.
One more time.
Okay.
We'll do it
Brian
together.
Brother's wife's sister was friends with Proctor's sister. Okay, that's how far removed. In other words, I could tell you, I have no idea who my sister-in-law's sister's friends are. I mean, there's no way. I couldn't tell you one of them. I don't even know my sister-in-law's friends. And we're very close. So my point is, this is how far removed it is. And then it's, again, Proctor's sister. Detective Proctor, I'm sorry, Trooper.
This was the scene yesterday outside the courthouse in Dedham, Massachusetts. This is how many people were protesting. And I just don't think they were only Free Karen Read people. I think there were also people who were on the other side. But this is how much public interest has been generated in this relatively small town in Norfolk County, Massachusetts.
For Proctor and Brian Albert, the home again, they had never even met each other. The pictures you're showing are his brother's family, And again, that's through this, removed relationship. So I think it's.
But I have a question though. I have questions. How does she know all this? How does she know? Who's she been talking to? Where does she get her information? Is she in contact with these people? Did she ask them questions about the photographs? Is she involved in the investigation at all? Because I thought she was just called on as an former FBI agent, to give some commentary. I didn't know that she had personal knowledge about these photographs. So I'm just a little bit curious, like, is she involved in the investigation? Has she spoken to these people who are in the photographs? How does she know their exact relationships and say it with such certainty and conviction? I just have questions.
Very important to understand that just because you have a Proctor there and an Albert there, they're not the same family unit. Second of all, everybody's forgetting about Brian Higgins. That chart, you're missing the ATF agent that was there. And that's very important too.
Wait, why is that very important? Why is she bringing up Brian Higgins and the fact that he's not mentioned in the chart? Why is that very important? Food for thought.
To have this conspiracy work, we have to have a Boston police officer, Canton Police, EMS, an ATF agent, the medical examiner's office, the district attorney, and the state police all combined to do this huge conspiracy against who? Nothing against Karen Read, but who?
Listen up, guys, listen up.
Who is Karen Read? Karen Read is no one special.
Who is Karen Read? Karen Read is no one special. Why would anybody even bother to frame her for the death of John O'Keefe? Why would anybody even bother? Who is Karen Read? She's nobody. I'm just going to rewind that because
other than she was dead.
Other than She was there earlier in the night, so maybe she's a patsy. I don't know. I'm just saying. I come from New York. We've seen it all here. So, the fact that she thinks this is so hard to understand because Karen Reed is what? A nobody? Let's bring that back a little bit, shall we?
Very complicated story. And again, there's actually two stories we're talking about.
Wait, where did she go? Sorry, guys.
We've got to hit a quick break. When we come back, much more. Don't go.
Read, but an ATF agent, the medical examiner's office, the district attorney, and the state police all combined to do this huge conspiracy against who? Nothing against Karen Reed, but who is Karen Reed? Karen Reed is no one special other than she was dating in a relationship that was falling apart the victim deceased.
Okay, everyone stay where you are. We've got to hit a quick break. When we come back, much more. Don't go anywhere.
Okay, let's fast forward through the break. But I didn't find that to be a very, very good reasoning. But, that's just my opinion. Let's get back to our commentary because we can go through all this another time, which we will when we do the bigger, deeper dive on this.
Okay, all my guests back with us, Melanie Little, Peter Ellikin, and Jennifer Koffendorfer. Melanie, which case is easier to prove? That he was murdered in the house or that he was murdered by Karen Reed?
I have so many questions. I think it's easier to prove that he was murdered in the house.
Tell me why.
In my opinion. I mean, where's the dog? I saw the photos of John Proctor's right arm that were taken at his autopsy. Okay, I did not even realize this while the show was live. I cringed when I watched it back. I called him John Proctor by accident. Don't kill me. It's live TV. Proctor is living rent-free in my head. It is John O'Keefe. I should have said John O'Keefe. My apologies to everyone. My apologies. Autopsy, they have what clearly looks to me to be like animal scratches on them. All of a sudden, the family dog of 7 years, they had a German Shepherd in the house. The family dog is gone. They rehomed the dog. The dog is missing. The dog's DNA cannot be tested to see if those were, in fact, animal scratches. There's a cocktail glass allegedly on the lawn. They never searched the inside of the house. Why did they never go inside the house to see if they had those type of glasses inside the house? Why was the basement flooring ripped up? The house was sold. Why did this police officer who owned the house and his wife never come out of their house to look at the scene when there is a dead police officer on their lawn? I have so many questions. And I think at the end of the day, the jury is going to have to decide the facts. And if we have so many questions from looking at these facts, I think a jury is going to have a lot of questions too.
Jennifer, which case is easier to prove?
Without a doubt, the case that he was hit.
Here is the picture from the autopsy. This is the picture of John O'Keefe's right arm, which looks to me like a dog attack. What say you, my friends? It does not look like someone who was hit at low speed, allegedly, by a car, but I'm going to get to that later. But did you notice the face she had on the whole time I was talking? She was not happy.
By Karen Reed. She had the motive. These are not dog scratches. That has been said by two medical examiners, separate medical examiners that examined him.
Did you see this guy? This guy's like, really? Because one of the medical examiners, I think, said that they didn't have enough experience to determine that. So,
Also, there were samples sent to a lab in California to test for non-human or canine DNA.
No, actually, no, that there weren't. Actually, I've got the emails. I've got the receipts on that. They actually sent no tissue samples. They were like lost, or they don't have them, or that is an outright misstatement of the facts of this case. Anybody can come in here and back me up, but I've got emails between the attorneys who say that they don't exist. So I'm not sure where that's coming from, but a lot of people said this is a actually very new statement that she's making. So yeah, no tissue samples, right? No tissue samples were taken. Yeah, I know. The look on my face. I just can't. I just can't.
Negative. So I find it so interesting that people want to look at a picture and all of a sudden their medical examiner,
People meaning me? All of a sudden, I'm a medical examiner?
they're doctors with PhDs, and they can
Doctors with PhDs? What doctor with a PhD is going to opine on the cause of these injuries?
say these are dog scratches. Second to the point there, the Albert
Watch this video because if you're not familiar with the case, they're also claiming that when Karen Reed backed into her boyfriend, Officer John O'Keefe, her taillight broke, and there were allegedly pieces of taillight found at the scene, but not found until 12 hours later during the second search after something like a foot of snow fell on top of the snow. But we're going to get to that at another date. But this is when she's leaving the house in the morning to go look for him because he didn't come home. And this is how the defense is saying that she broke her taillight. So
Brian Albert, they sold their house months and months after that. Also, they had a leak.
they sold their house. And quite frankly, they sold their house very close in time to the point where the defense attorneys came out in open court and started accusing them or, just putting their names out there as being potential other suspects or, maybe this is who we're going to point the finger at trial kind of thing. So again, I wish I had more time to rebut each and every one of these arguments, but I didn't. But I can do it now.
Downstairs in the basement that resulted in quite a lot of damage, and that's why the flooring was replaced.
Right, because there was a flood.
As far as the dog, Chloe got into a fight with another dog in that neighborhood. And during that fight, one of the neighbors went to separate the two dogs and was scratched or bitten. And it was decided amongst the people that they would go ahead and rehome the dog as opposed to making an even larger deal out of it. So there are very logical explanations, but these are the types of innuendos that have been completely blown up.
Okay, that's where it ended. But at the end, Vinny let me give final thoughts. And so I said, as a clap back to Ms. Coffendorfer, I don't think I said it this way, but I may not be a medical doctor or a doctor with a PhD, but throughout my 30-year career as a trial attorney, I have handled hundreds, if not thousands, of motor vehicle accident cases. And what I can tell you is that those injuries depicted in that photograph did not happen in a car versus pedestrian low-speed motor vehicle accident. They just didn't. It's a fact. That's how I ended it, because he said to me, as a closing, and I wanted to clap back on this, I just had to figure out how. Closing thoughts, what do you think is the most important piece of evidence in this case? That's how I got back to the autopsy photos so that I could contest what she said, because those are not. I have handled thousands of car accident cases during the course of my career, and those did not come from the bumper of a Lexus truck SUV. They just didn't. That's why this case is going to be a battle of the experts. And there's going to be accident reconstruction experts and all kinds of experts who are going to come in and say that didn't happen from a car accident. It has been hypothesized in one of the theories of the case, and this is what the defense attorneys have said during some of their arguments on the motions, that this was John O'Keefe's right arm. They had, as they said, a German Shepherd in the house. The dog had apparently attacked people before John O'Keefe's death. This wasn't the first attack. If something happened, maybe it was an accident inside the house, maybe he fell, maybe they came to blows. I don't know what happened. Nobody knows what happened except the people that were there. If a dog was about to attack you, that would be, if you were right-handed and if he's right-hand dominant, that would be the arm that you would hold up to protect your face from getting scratched. I'm just saying. Are they going to claim that there was a wild animal who came after him while he was laying on the lawn? I don't know. So it's interesting because the dog has disappeared and they can't take the DNA from the dog because the dog was rehomed, and it's a whole thing. The house was sold, the carpet was ripped up. In my mind, it leaves a lot of reasonable doubt. I would not be able to convict Karen Reed for allegedly running him over in her car with all of this other extraneous circumstantial evidence. I just wouldn't. But now, yes, that's right. I have questions says, had they done any of this investigation the right way? No one could say any of this if it was a crap investigation. Yeah, they collected blood samples in solo cups. Scott, if you don't know about this case, you are going to be horrified by the way this crime scene was handled. You know, they blood samples, droplets of blood in solo cups. They never go inside the house. The police officer and his wife who own the house, who live in the house, this is allegedly the friend that they invited over for the after party at their house after they'd all been drinking at some bars in town. He's dead on their front lawn at 6 a.m. and they never come out of their house. They never come out of their house. And in fact, when Trooper Proctor interviews them later on that morning, he doesn't come to their house to do it. He goes to the McCabe's house to do the interview. The house was never searched. The whole thing was sus, in my opinion. In my opinion, it's sus. But, you know, we're going to see where the evidence goes. So let's take a look. We're gonna work backwards a little bit because this motions hearing happened yesterday. The defense is looking for electronic evidence between Proctor's wife, Elizabeth Proctor, and Jen McCabe. And they were also looking for electronic evidence, any communications between Trooper Proctor and the Alberts, and electronic communication between Jennifer McCabe and Proctor. You're going to see. We're going to listen to them argue it, and then the judge reserves decision in the hearing, but then she's going to issue a decision later in the day that a lot of people might not know about yet. They were also looking for the DNA of Troopers Proctor and that Sergeant, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Buchanek. And they're looking for their DNA because on these pieces of taillight that they allegedly found at the scene, there is not only the decedent's Sergeant Police Officer John O'Keefe's DNA on the taillight pieces, but two unknown male DNA. So they want samples from Trooper Proctor and the sergeant to see if they match the unknown DNA on those taillight pieces. So let's get into this motions hearing. And what I want you to take note of first is the amount of support that Karen Reed has in the courtroom. Again, this is in Norfolk County, Massachusetts. This courthouse is in Dedham. And you're going to get a little taste of what happened there yesterday in the courtroom. Okay, they take a couple minutes to get settled, so I'm going to fast forward a little bit until the judge comes on the bench.
From Superior Court, before they come to your door for, give your attendance, may be seated.
Your Honor, this is 22117, the Commonwealth versus Karen Reed. Can I have counsel identify themselves, starting with the Commonwealth?
Adam Lally for the Commonwealth. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Lally.
Good morning, Your Honor. Laura McLaughlin for the Commonwealth.
Good morning, Ms. McLaughlin.
Your Honor, Alan Jackson on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Jackson.
Good morning, Your Honor. Attorney David Yannetti on behalf of Karen Reed.
Good morning, Mr. Yannetti.
Good morning, Your Honor. Elizabeth Little, also on behalf of Ms. Reed.
Good morning, Ms. Little.
No relation. I am not related to Elizabeth Little. Somebody asked that before in the chat. No relation.
Oh, good morning, Ms. Reed. All right.
Yannetti was the original attorney on the case. Alan Jackson was brought in later as a high-powered Los Angeles attorney who handled the Kevin Spacey case. He's got very deep experience in electronic evidence and forensics, and that's why they brought him onto the team. Luckily, she has enough resources to be able to pay these highly paid attorneys because this is costing her a fortune. She's also asking to get some of her bond money back because I think, you can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong, they're holding at least $80,000 to $100,000 of her money that she needs to pay for experts and her defense and all kinds of other things. So here we go.
Could I just have, Mr. Reddington, could you identify yourself for the record?
Sure. Kevin Reddington, I represent Jennifer McCabe.
Good morning, Mr. Reddington. I appreciate you joining us today. I know that you're out of the country. Thank you.
Okay, so Jen McCabe's attorney, Reddington, is on Zoom, and there's a couple of Baba Booey moments here that are going to happen, so just be prepared for that. I don't know where that's coming from, because I think if the public was allowed to watch this by Zoom, they would all be muted automatically. So I don't know if these people were in Reddington's office, but just listen for that.
All right. So we have 4 sets of motions. The first one that I would like to address.
Free my boy Tibbsy.
What was that, Jim?
Saying free my boy Tibbsy, free my boy Tibbsy.
I don't know what that was.
I think it was somebody on Zoom.
Yeah, nobody can speak, so it only could have been maybe, I think we're all set.
All right. So the first motion I'd like to deal with is the defendant's motion for Rule 17 records directed to Jennifer McCabe, Trooper Michael Proctor, and Elizabeth Proctor. Who's arguing that for the defense? All right, I'll hear you, Mr. Jackson.
Free my boy Billy Tibbetts. Free Billy in the trap.
Kevin, could you just be...
Free my boy Billy Tibbetts. I don't know who Billy Tibbetts is. I tried to look it up. It came up that he was a hockey player. I don't think that's who they're talking about. So if anybody knows. Oh, Laura says Billy Tibbetts is well known in Massachusetts. Okay. All right. I guess he's in the clink. I don't know. I guess he's in the clink. I see the glare is here. High glare. You're going to have to give me a little bit of latitude on some of the facts here, but you feel free to correct me in the chat. But I know that you are deep into this case and know far more of the facts than I do, although I have been following it behind the scenes. So this is my legal take on it.
Either mute or watch us.
Jim, that's not me. It's somebody else is saying, free my boy Billy Tibbetts. It's not me.
Okay. Thanks, Mr. Reddington.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Kevin, that was you.
Good morning, Your Honor, and thank you for giving us the time to address the court on these summonses for the third-party communications. I think I can cut this relatively short, given the Commonwealth's position that they are in agreement that the summonses for these third-party communications should issue. I want to save some court time.
Billy's innocent.
All right, so we may have to cancel Zoom for everybody if this keeps up. We will have to cancel Zoom for everybody if this keeps up.
I think I got that person, but...
Fuck off, Beverly.
Oh, did you hear that? He said, F off, Beverly, and that's the judge's name, Beverly. But I mean, how do they allow this to happen? How does anybody have their microphone on? When you are running a Zoom meeting, you have the power to mute all the participants, which is what you do. So I don't know, just a little bit odd.
Go ahead, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I want to try to save some court time and judicial resources. If the court is inclined, given the Commonwealth's position that they are in agreement with us to issue the summonses, I'll just submit on the papers and be done.
I have third parties that need to be heard.
If the court wishes, I'm happy to address the third party concerns once they are heard.
No, I'll hear you now.
In terms of the papers that were filed, and my understanding is Mr. Reddington joined on Ms. McCabe's behalf with Elizabeth Proctor's motion and her position filed by her counsel. It basically comes down to a singular issue, and that is one of privacy. They don't have standing to argue Lampron. They're not parties to this action. It appears the Commonwealth, who is the party to the action, has agreed that Lampron, the elements of Lampron have been met with our request insofar as it is concerned, specifically and addressed to Michael Proctor, Trooper Michael Proctor, and his communications with Jennifer McCabe, Elizabeth Proctor's communications with Jennifer McCabe, Jennifer McCabe's communications, counter communications with Elizabeth Proctor, and Michael Proctor's communications with Brian Albert and Nicole Albert. I'll address the issues that counsel raised in his moving papers on behalf of Elizabeth Proctor, because that's the only writing that I have to go on at this point. He basically argued that there are...
So just so we're clear, the prosecution is not opposing the motion as to Trooper Proctor or Jen McCabe. They're opposing the motion as to Elizabeth Proctor.
False statements made about Michael Proctor's relationship with some of these other parties. Since the very beginning, and that brings up the fundamental issue, Your Honor, of what is that relationship and what's the nature of the relationship, and why do we believe that that relationship establishes extrinsic evidence of bias and an inability to be neutral. From the very beginning of this case, we have questioned the neutrality and the bias of Michael Proctor and certain other government witnesses based on overwhelming facts that we've learned, overwhelming facts that establish that both this investigator and this investigation are compromised. That's why we...
Do you have that, Tori? Okay.
This is the first time anybody's run a Zoom in that courtroom?
Go ahead.
Thank you. That's why we've asked for the communications that the Commonwealth has now agreed with. Our request is nothing short of critical to our defense, obviously, and it's based on Ms. Reed's constitutional right as established in Davis versus Alaska, the U.S. Supreme Court constitutional right that's recognized as the right to attack the credibility of any government witness, be they a government witness on behalf of the police and the investigation or any other government witness.
Is Elizabeth Proctor a government witness?
She is not, but Jennifer McCabe is. And the communications that we're interested in are the communications that are concomitant between Elizabeth Proctor and Jennifer McCabe. We've established that there is a close personal relationship between and among Michael Proctor and obviously Elizabeth Proctor and these third-party culprits that have been implicated in this case that we've brought to the court's attention, the Alberts and the McCabes. That's the relationship, and that's the foundation of our request. This is so important that I'll bring it back to the court's attention, and the court knows this, that even the sitting DA, the elected DA, decided to weigh in on this issue of the relationship between the Proctors and the McCabes and or the Alberts. And he said there's no such relationship, zero. This doesn't exist. As a matter of fact, the word that he used was, it's a lie. Any suggestion to the contrary that there's any kind of relationship between the Proctors and the McCabes or the Proctors and the Alberts is a lie. His words. So the DA himself has put Trooper Proctor's neutrality at issue, and he did it in the most public way possible, and I would suggest a clumsy way. Who was he talking to? He didn't come into this courthouse and address the court, as we've all done. He didn't address the court. He didn't address the Commonwealth. He is the Commonwealth. He didn't address us, the defense. What he did do is he addressed the public and the potential jurors, and that was by design. So he calls the evidence that we've procured and that we've presented to the court as lies. Well, let's look at those lies for a quick second. We have presented the court with photographic evidence, not something that we came up with, something they came up with. Photographs in Exhibit C in our moving papers. And I'll just cover a couple of those. There's a photograph that we presented that shows Trooper Proctor's mother, the person by the name of Colin Albert, pictured in the photograph, with Trooper Proctor's sister pictured in the photograph, with Chris Albert pictured in the photograph, and with Jennifer McCabe's own daughter depicted in the photograph. They're all together at a birthday party. These are close and immediate family members of the Proctor family, the Albert family, and the McCabe family, and they're all together and they're socializing. That's not a lie, it's a photograph. And it's unassailable evidence of that relationship. There's a second photograph of Trooper Proctor and Colin Albert in a wedding party together. And I would urge the court to note, they're not at a wedding together, they're in a wedding together, in the wedding party. There's a third photograph.
And when was that? When was
sorry?
that? When was that?
I just don't want to, Ms. Honorary, I will read all the super chats at the end, or we'll take a break for that in the middle. I just don't want to disrupt the flow right now, but I see you guys making them and I appreciate everything you're doing for me. Yeah, how can that be? I thought they never knew each other before either. But you know, photographs don't lie. Although Ms. Coffendorfer will have an answer for all of that, as she did last night on Court TV with me, but I digress.
2012. So this relationship, as the court just noted, and I was about to get to in a second, is not just days old, months old, weeks old. This relationship is decades old between these families. There's another photograph that the court has seen, Trooper Proctor literally on the dance floor with Colin Albert. So when counsel for Elizabeth Proctor suggests, oh no, these relationships, you can't believe any of this stuff, just because someone happens to be at the same event does not thereby establish a relationship. They weren't just at the same event. They're in a wedding party together. They're standing on the dance floor, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, Trooper Proctor and Colin Albert. And then we see a photograph of all of them seated at the same dining room table. They shared a meal together. This is socializing. These are interpersonal relationships, and they can't change that. Trooper Proctor was seated at the same table, having dinner with Colin Albert, Chris Albert, and Chris Albert's wife, Julie. Then there's the Facebook post, and I will leave it at this. I'm not going to go through the entirety of my motion, but I would highlight the last point that I think should be highlighted for the court's attention, and that's the Facebook post. Trooper Proctor's mother refers to the Albert family as the Proctor's second family. So one might actually ask,
The Albert family as the Proctor's second family. Food for thought. But they don't know each other.
Mr. Morrissey, who's actually lying in this case? Is it us? We just presented the court with factual information that was procured off of social media that it's unassailable. It cannot be assailed. And the Proctors have known these people for, as the court just mentioned, by asking for that date, for more than a decade. They've socialized with him, and his family considers their family to be so close and interconnected that they are deemed a second family to the Proctors. And who exactly are members of this Albert family and or McCabe family? Let's look at those members. Brian Albert, Nicole Albert, who is Jennifer McCabe's sister, Brian Albert Jr., Brian and Nicole's son, Caitlin Albert, Brian and Nicole's daughter, Jennifer McCabe, Nicole Albert's sister, Matt McCabe, Brian Albert's brother-in-law, Chris Albert, Brian Albert's brother, Julie Albert, Brian Albert's sister-in-law, and Colin Albert, Chris and Julie Albert's son. The McCabes and Alberts ostensibly are one family. They socialize within the same social circle, in the same familial circle, and that is who the Proctors have proclaimed to be their second family. And if that weren't enough, we find out during the pendency of this case on September 25th, 2023, that one of those family members, Jennifer McCabe, who's the subject of great interest in this case and a primary person of interest in this case, is invited to Trooper Proctor's personal home for some sort of off-the-books meeting. Do we know about this meeting? Because Trooper Proctor, upon learning this, that Jennifer McCabe was coming to his house, ran back to the office and filed a police report, a supplemental report explaining this meeting, this off-the-books meeting. No, he never disclosed it. We found out about this because a concerned citizen happened to photograph Jennifer McCabe's car parked outside Michael and Elizabeth Proctor's personal residence in the evening after hours.
Okay, I'm getting vibes of like the Myatt Retta people doing their own investigation for the defense. So people are doing investigation for Karen Reed. Somebody got a picture of Jen McCabe's car allegedly outside the personal home of the lead investigator in this case. And it's not in any of the police reports, and they're claiming they don't know each other. So food for thought. To me, it looks a little sus. But yes, Claire, yes, I said that earlier. I said we're giving Turtle Boy a lot of cred for raising public awareness on this case, but I just didn't want to get into all the side drama. But yeah, I do give him a lot of credit for bringing public awareness. People in the chat, this is outside of Boston, it's a suburb, Norfolk County, Massachusetts. Somebody said, where is this? Let me know where you are watching from. Are any international viewers following this case? Because I know it's getting to be. It was originally just a local story, New England-ish. And it has spread now, I think, nationwide. And I'd like to know if it's international. So if any of my international viewers are here, just let me know if you're hearing about this case from your side of the pond and elsewhere.
And the best that counsel for Elizabeth Proctor can muster in terms of an argument is to say, well, you know what, Your Honor, maybe he wasn't home. Maybe. Or maybe not. The suspicious part is Trooper Proctor isn't saying. And there's nothing in Elizabeth Proctor's motion to suggest that he wasn't home. Certainly his car was there. Elizabeth Proctor's car was there, and Jennifer McCabe's car was there. Was Trooper Proctor home? I guess I would answer that by asking the question, does it matter if Trooper Proctor was home? They've now admitted that Jennifer McCabe, a central character in the middle of this investigation, in the middle of this crime, was secretly meeting and or socializing with the lead investigator and or his wife in the living room of their home. And that, Your Honor, is a problem. And it shows more than a
not just a problem. It just gives the appearance of impropriety. Wouldn't you say, anyone? The appearance of impropriety?
Professional connection. It shows a personal connection. And according to the Proctor family's own counsel, Elizabeth Proctor's counsel, the subject matter of that meeting was commiserating about this case. They weren't talking about sports. They weren't talking about the weather. They were meeting about this case. So how does that not show a bias, and how does that not implicate Karen Reed's constitutional rights to this information? And to this day, the Commonwealth has yet to concede what obviously is now sort of front page news, that there is in fact a personal relationship between the Proctors and their second family, the Albert McCabe family. But here's what the Commonwealth has said, even though they haven't made that connection or that concession. On October 3rd, 2022, Mr. Lally made a couple of points, eloquent points in this courtroom. And what he was doing when he did it in October was illustrating what an inappropriate relationship would look like if one existed, what a conflict of interest would look like if one existed. And he said, quote, Michael Proctor has been fully vetted, end quote. He said, there's no conflict of interest here because it's not like, quote, these people are socializing together, end quote. He said, it's not.
That didn't age well, did it? That didn't age well.
Not like, quote, these people know each other, end quote. And he went on to say, it's not like, quote, these are people that Trooper Proctor has been over to their home, end quote. The Commonwealth said that because these facts would surely illustrate a conflict of interest. They would surely illustrate an undeniable bias. And those comments, Your Honor, I would suggest have not aged well. And I would wonder at this point if the Commonwealth hasn't adjusted its stance, which is why the Commonwealth is now conceding that we're entitled to these communications. And that turns on the question of asking, how could Trooper Proctor be expected to adequately and honestly investigate this case as the lead investigator, and also investigate the Albert McCabe involvement in this case, with this history of an interpersonal relationship and allegiance to those very people, the very third-party culprits, the very people who should be suspects in John O'Keefe's murder? And the answer is he cannot. And since the authorities, including Michael Morrissey, apparently have vouched for Trooper Proctor, my client, our client, Ms. Reed, is entitled to question and to test that voucher. And that's what we're seeking to do with the communications between Elizabeth Proctor and Jennifer McCabe. And insofar as that request is concerned, it's unquestionable that there are privacy interests at play, but I would suggest the following. that the constitutional due process rights of any criminal defendant in any criminal case hold a paramount significance because they form the very backbone of the justice system that this court presides over. And protecting those rights, such as the right to a fair trial, such as Ms. Reed's right to the presumption of innocence, that ensures an equitable trial and an equitable process. And while privacy rights of Elizabeth Proctor, a third-party witness, are obviously an element of concern and consideration for the court, they must yield to the imperative of a fair trial. And that imperative means Ms. Reed's ability to confront and properly cross-examine all witnesses, including Jennifer McCabe, including attacking the credibility of government witnesses, including Jennifer McCabe, based on bias, and that is fundamental to our justice system. So striking this balance ultimately upholds the integrity of the very system that this court is making sure exists and continues throughout the process of this trial. Elizabeth Proctor's privacy rights, while they exist, especially in light of the narrow focus of our request, are vastly outweighed by our client's right to a fair trial. And with that, Your Honor, I'll submit.
All right, thank you.
Smooth. He's like butter. He's like butter, this guy. Gotta love him. Gotta love him. Is this guy Lally going to be trying the case against him? Because let's go to the super chats for a minute and all the questions, because this reminds me kind of the Long Island serial killer case, where it's going to be the defense attorney, Michael Brown, who we've seen do press conferences here. He's Rex Heuermann's attorney. For those of you who don't know, I am on Long Island. I cover the Long Island serial killer case. I've been living with the Long Island serial killer case since 1996. And then with all the police corruption that followed it, which is why nobody was arrested in the Gilgo 4 murders until 2023, actually, just this year. So we know police corruption here on Long Island. We do not think that this is so far out of the realm of possibility that things could be covered up. I'm not saying that it is. I'm just saying it's within the realm of possibility. This reminds me of Michael Brown, who's the attorney for Rex Heuermann, how this case is going to be tried with Ray Tierney trying the case, who's the district attorney of Suffolk County here on Long Island. And that is going to be a show. It is going to be quite a show. New York does not allow cameras in courtrooms, so that will not be televised, unlike this case, which is scheduled to go to trial on March 12th. I don't know how they're going to get there that quickly based on the judge's decision and all this new evidence that's going to come out, but this is interesting. This is interesting. Alicia says, Jackson and Yeti are going to eat Lally alive. That's what I'm saying. Like, you're going to see now, those of you who have not been following this case, are going to see this guy, Alan Jackson, who's LA Smooth, right out of Central Casting, I submit to you. And you're going to see the attorney who's trying this for the Commonwealth. I keep wanting to say the state, but it's not state. It's Massachusetts. It's the Commonwealth. Commonwealth. All right. Laura, thank you so much for your super chat. Did we already address this? I think we did, but we will say, well, again, Laura, thank you for your super chat. Once you've seen all the evidence that has been presented so far, there's no way that you can prove to me beyond a reasonable doubt KR is guilty. Turtle Boy really broke this. So glad we are covering it. Thank you. I'm so glad we are covering it too. The Only Latina, thank you for your super chat. I've been following the Karen Reed case since day one. She's innocent. I can't find the episode you were on. I looked in Court TV. It was last night's episode, the 8 o'clock hour. Vinnie Politan's show. It's called Closing Arguments. I played a little clip of it earlier. The first clip of the show, he did not have the guests on, so it was really only the second half hour of the show. And they cut off my amazing ending, where I clapped back at Jennifer Koffendorfer with my experience investigating car accident cases. And I said, there's no way that arm happened from a car accident. But hopefully they're going to repost it on YouTube and we will be able to see it there. Thank you, Maureen, for your super sticker. You're always so generous to me and I really appreciate you. Alicia Smith, thank you for your super sticker. Thank you for my expert coverage. Thank you so much for liking it and for watching. Everyone, please hit the like button while we're here. Hit the like and subscribe, says Jade. Thank you for your super sticker. I did not see that before I put it up on the screen. And Sarah says, OMG, congrats on the Court TV appearance. Thank you, Sarah Harvey, and thank you for your support. I appreciate you and your generous super chat. Girl RWB, thank you for your super chat. Why these charges? Cause of death, thanks. Yeah, well, That's why this case is going to be battle of the experts, because the prosecution is saying that Karen Reed did a 3-point turn and backed into him with her car going 26 miles an hour. They keep changing their theory, but this is, I think, the most current theory. And the defense is saying, no way these injuries were caused by her backing into the car, by her backing her car into him. There's a lot of questions about evidence collection, about what was found during the 2 different searches of the crime scene. There's a lot of, the defense is saying he went in the house, got into some kind of an altercation, took a beating, was dragged out, left on the lawn, and they are making Karen Reed out to be the fall girl in this case. Everyone inside the house was related. The ties run deep, and that's what he was just arguing there. So there's some conflicting reports on what the actual cause of death was. Hypothermia was involved. There were major skull fractures, major lacerations, and a lot of other injuries that we don't have time to get into today, but we will, because we're going to start from the beginning on this case with the probable cause affidavit, go through the autopsy report, all the things that we can get our hands on to actually do a deeper dive into this, because I know a lot of you who follow me, we have not done this case together yet. You may be watching it other places. I don't know any other law tubers that are covering it, so I am happy to be here for you. The Only Latina, thank you again. Coffin got caught on Twitter putting a post and accidentally put up a screenshot of Chris Albert's contacts. What? Today? Or, wow, that's good information or interesting to know. Thank you, Noni Lady, for being a member and for thanking me for covering this in depth for you. Ashley Snow, appreciate your super sticker. Thank you so much. Mrs. Mark, thank you so much for your super sticker. I appreciate you very much. This is technically, basically a volunteer position, so any and all contributions are appreciated, never expected, but always appreciated, and so kind of you to watch. And I thought this was hilarious. It strains credulity that they don't know each other, says Ed. And if you followed the Maya trial with me, you know exactly where that comes from. I'm working on t-shirts that say, my credulity is strained. Let me know if you're into that, because I think that is absolutely fantastic. Laura, thank you for your super sticker. Where is Chloe? Chloe is the dog. Why didn't BA Brian Albert go out with the crime scene on his lawn? I don't know. This is a guy who's allegedly friendly enough to invite to his house for an after party. So why doesn't he go out there? If there's a dead body on your lawn, whether you're a police officer or not, aren't you going out there to see what's up? You know, a jury doesn't leave their common sense at the door when they come in to serve. I always say that. Juries don't leave their common sense at the door. They're going to look at this and they're going to say, why didn't they come out of the house? It's just weird, sus, and I don't know. Why fill in the pool? Sell the house for $50,000 less market value. Replace the basement floor 2 times. So Jennifer McCabe, for those of you who don't know, allegedly Google searched how long to die in the cold at something like 2:24 a.m., 2:27, somewhere around there. She misspelled it and spelled it Haas, long to die in cold. The prosecution has some expert who's going to say that she didn't really Google it at that time. She really Googled it after they found the body, because the Google search window that she opened reverts back to the time that the window was originally open. This is going to be a whole battle of the experts thing. Defense is going to have electronic forensics experts who are going to say, no, that's exactly what time the search was made. So we don't need to dive deep into that now, but that is what Laura is referring to, and so much more. Yes. Yes, there is. Thank you, Maureen, for your super sticker and for being so generous. The Only Latina, there is an FBI investigation. Yes, there is. We didn't even get to that yet, but the FBI is investigating the investigation. So it gets deeper. There's an investigation into the investigation. How often do we see that in the world of true crime? Not often. Steve Scanlon is who blew the whistle and told Karen Reed's attorney. Well, there has been a federal grand jury convened. They are working on that behind the scenes. And maybe that's why the judge wants this to go to trial too sweet, March 12th. Maybe that is why now they're being a little more cooperative with turning over discovery, with not opposing motions. There's a long history of this case, but suffice to say that they took they dragged their feet for a very long time, turning over certain evidence, in some cases a year to 18 months to turn over evidence. It's deep. It's a tangled web we weave, my friends. Thank you, Shiraz, for your super sticker. I always appreciate you so much. Diane Wallenstein, thank you for your super sticker so much. Guys are really coming in hot tonight. Thank you, LTL True Crime, for your super chat. And thanks for pushing the movement out there loud and proud. Free County, listen, somebody's got to stand up and start talking for people who can't talk for themselves. And I've been doing that my entire career. I stood up for the victims of clergy SA against the Roman Catholic Diocese of Rockville Center on Long Island, where I live. And yes, I am Catholic. So the ties run deep. I've seen it. I've seen cover-ups firsthand. I know how they work. And this one is not nearly as complex as the one with the Catholic Church. So I think we can weed through this one. Thank you, CG in Texas, for being a member 2 months. What, if anything, do I know about this judge? I do not know this judge I wouldn't know this judge in a 2-man lineup, let's just say, or a 2-woman lineup. But we will, of course, dig deeper into that because I'm so glad that my viewers love to give me information and real information because we want to deal with facts here. We don't want to deal with any speculation or any sort of, hypotheses or conspiracy theories. We just want to deal with the facts, and we're dealing with the facts because the attorneys are giving. Now, listen, what they say are not evidence, but these are things that when you are an attorney and you are an officer of the court, to get up there and say these things, you need to have a good faith basis for saying them. I mean, unlike in the Maya Kowalski trial, where we saw some attorneys get up and argue things that they found on Reddit with really no basis in fact. So, but did the Catholic Church kill the dog? I don't know. I don't think so. Let's get back to this hearing. Otherwise, we're going to be here all night, but that's fine with me. I have to do a little mommy Ubering later, but what else? She can wait. All right. Back to court.
Mr. Lally, are we going to hear first from counsel for Ms. Proctor, counsel for Ms. McCabe? I got an appearance this morning of counsel for the troopers as well. Is counsel for the troopers going to address us?
No, Your Honor, that's in reference to another motion.
Okay, so I will hear counsel for Ms. Proctor.
Wait, stop, Nick. I'm going to put this up on the screen. I'm not going to read it out loud, but if you have any evidence of that, or if you have any, facts or court papers or anything that's like official documents that I can look at, I would love to see that because that's a very interesting connection. One of the mods usually drop my email in chat, and I am obviously inundated with a million emails. I do always read them. I don't always get a chance to respond to them, but you can make sure that I do read them. And oftentimes I do shows on things that you guys suggest. But yeah, that's an interesting connection that I would love to know more about, Nick Rocco. So I know you guys who are local know a lot more about this case than I do, but I'm happy to hear about it. Oops.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
Andrew Kettlewell for Elizabeth Proctor.
Good morning, Mr. Kettlewell.
So this is not a balancing test between the defendant's right to a fair trial, which is obviously constitutionally protected and paramount to our system, and Elizabeth Proctor's privacy right.
Okay, so this is the attorney for Elizabeth Proctor. She is a non-party to this case. She's not even a witness to this case, but they want her communications with Jennifer McCabe because of the fact that Jennifer McCabe's car was found outside of the Proctor's house. So they are trying to get any electronic evidence between Jennifer McCabe and Elizabeth Proctor. He is coming in to argue for Elizabeth Proctor against the motion to turn over the electronic evidence.
This is a request to bring evidence before this court for the purpose of trial under the mechanism of Rule 17 that is not within the framework of Rule 17. And I'm sure the court has had the opportunity to review our papers. Our sole basis of an objection is not Ms. Proctor's privacy rights. That is obviously paramount concern to any third party, and the interest in not being harassed or brought into a criminal matter or a civil matter that that individual has no involvement in is obviously of interest to anyone. But as it relates to the standard here, the question is whether the defendant's request satisfies the 4 prongs of Lampron and the basis of Rule 17. And the defendant's request, I would submit to the court, fails on 3 of those 4 prongs. And I'm not going to belabor the facts underlying this whole situation. My brother laid out his case. That is laid out quite clearly in his affidavit as well. What I would say about the facts is, with regard to the first prong of admissibility and relevance,
Can somebody,
while hearsay,
he keeps referring to my brother, my brother, my brother. Can somebody explain to me what he means by that? His brother? Does he mean like his brother in arms? Is there somebody who's actually his brother? I know my mods are on this, but I just saw something in here. So, guys, we're not going to tolerate any personal attacks, any bullying, any cursey words, any foul language in the chat. So just be on notice. Guide your actions accordingly. Somebody got to it already. So let me know when he says my brother. Lawyer? That's what he means, lawyer? Huh. Interesting. I didn't think anybody was actually brothers. I thought maybe, all right, I don't know. If they use weird like verbiage in courts in the Commonwealth, I'm not sure. I don't practice. I practice in New York, not in Massachusetts.
that is reliable is certainly sufficient as a basis for a subpoena to issue. Hearsay which is not a basis for a subpoena to issue. And in this case, my brother's affidavit essentially amounts to a large collection of conjecture and allegations which are not supported. With regard to the motion and the opposition that I filed, I appended an affidavit that lays out the basis for why I assert what I assert in my affidavit. And that's essentially conversations with individuals who have personal knowledge of where Michael Proctor was on the night of September 25th, 2023, individuals who have personal knowledge of the connections between, as my brother says, these 2 families, and who have personal knowledge relating to the actual photograph that my brother didn't mention in Exhibit C of his affidavit of Michael Proctor with 2 children who are still minors, who are not children of Jennifer McCabe. Essentially, the relationship between these 2, quote, families is a distant connection that involves 5 separate steps of relationships between, I guess I'll call them relatives. Mr. Proctor's sister has a friend whose sister is married into the Albert family. And that's Chris Albert, not Brian Albert. And so what brought these different families to a wedding in 2012 was the fact that Mr. Proctor's sister, or Elizabeth Proctor's sister-in-law, was getting married, had her friend at her wedding, and her friend's sister and her family also wound up attending that wedding. The fact that Colin Albert and Michael Proctor were in the same wedding party, I think is mitigated somewhat by the fact that Colin Albert was about 10 years old at the time and served as a ring bearer because he was a child. So the connections that my brother tries to lay out in his affidavit, I would suggest are not what that affidavit makes it seem. Regardless of all of that, there's still issues on admissibility and relevance under the first prong of Lampron. And the reason for that is the defense actually includes a description of this September 25th meeting between Elizabeth Proctor and Jennifer McCabe and why that meeting occurred in a state police report that it actually appends to its motion. And whether or not a court down the road agrees that that area of testimony is valid grounds for exploration for impeachment of Ms. McCabe. What's occurring here is that the defense is attempting to use that as a basis to go get another layer of even more extrinsic evidence on the hope that something that's in the phone of an unrelated third party might impeach Ms. McCabe in an area that is already potentially a grounds of extrinsic evidence for impeachment. And that is not what is permitted under Rule 17. That is a hope, that is a conjecture, and that is not the purpose of the rule. And I'm not going to belabor the point for the court because I know the court is very familiar with Rule 17, but the purpose of the rule is to bring into the court for inspection and for purposes of trial records which are going to be admitted or are likely to be admitted at trial. It is not for discovery. It is not for exploration, whether or not that exploration the defense believes is part of its case or not. It's a question of, are those records going to be admitted at trial, and do we know they exist? And the defendant hasn't made out any of those factors at this point. The defendant is essentially assuming that there are records, does not know what is in those records, and as a basis is requesting. And that is not a Rule 17 motion, that's a discovery motion. And with regard to that kind of last prong of Lampron, I think the defendant makes clear her basis for the request in counsel's affidavit, as I cite in my opposition. And that's thus the communication surrounding this, parentheses, and other meetings, which again, the defendant has no basis to believe there might even be other meetings, close parentheses, may reveal information necessitating further pretrial motions, including a motion to dismiss based on extraordinary governmental misconduct. And that's the purpose of this Rule 17 motion, but that's not the purpose of Rule 17. The purpose of Rule 17 is to bring into court relevant and admissible records. These records are not relevant to an issue in this case. They would not be admissible under any rule of evidence. And based on what's actually asserted by my brother in his affidavit, nothing about that assertion meets the rule of Rule 17, meets the requirements of Rule 17. The fact that communications may reveal information right off the bat fails. And the fact that they are looking for these records as they might necessitate further pretrial motions, including a motion to dismiss, is entirely anathema to Rule 17, which is designed to bring records into the court for purpose of trial. And so based on all of those and what I lay out in my papers, I would ask the court to deny the motion.
All right. Thank you very much.
Okay, I think he did a good job. He had a cogent argument. I've learned something today. I think my brother made a good argument there. My brother. Thank you, Making Law Simple, for actually making law simple and explaining to us with your super chat that he's referring to brother counsel and sister counsel, the other attorneys in the case. It's a stupid term, but they use it. I guess it's a Massachusetts thing because I've never heard that before. The way I've heard brother used is what Scott is saying. Cops and firefighters usually call each other brothers, even if we don't know each other. So that's what I was thinking. I was thinking, is he also a police officer? Is he a police officer and an attorney? And he's referring to his police officer brother. So yeah, I was a little bit confused by that. But look, we learn something new every day on this channel and everywhere. Thank you for Making Law Simple for that. I also saw that somebody gifted some memberships. And hey, if you want to be in the running for a gifted membership, all you got to do is opt into gifts and participate in the chat, and YouTube distributes them randomly to people in the chat. So Galen, thank you so much for gifting 10 memberships. You are always so very generous with your gifting, and I love that about you, and I appreciate you so much. Thank you, Martin Rich, with your Boston Red Sox logo, and your super chat. Lawyers in Massachusetts often refer to brothers and sisters, used as in brothers-in-law. Awesome. I mean, who knew? I didn't know. I didn't know the Commonwealth did that. And that is very interesting. And Glary, you are so welcome. Thank you for your super chat. And thank you for all the coverage you've done on this too. Got to shine a light out there on things that people need to know about. thank you, Kevin Trotter, for appreciating my analysis and my beauty, apparently. I appreciate you very much. Thank you for that. Ashley became a new member. Yay, Ashley. And let's see. That is where we are right now. I think we're going to speed this up a little bit because, no, Janet wants to know if an attorney can practice in any state. No, you have to be licensed in a particular state. So, for example, I'm licensed in New York. New York is reciprocal with very few states. Colorado is one, and I know that because I went to CU. Go Buffs. That's a CU logo. Somebody thought it was a goldfish. No, it's University of Colorado Buffs neon sign. And I'm sorry if you have epilepsy and it bothers you, but I can't dim it, and it's there, and that's the way it is, and I like it, so I'm leaving it there. SCO Buffs. I went to law school, undergrad in Boulder, and went to University of Denver at law school. So New York is reciprocal, I think, only with Colorado and DC. Any other state, you would need to take a bar, or you definitely need the bar to take the bar to get into California and to Florida. You'd have to take a whole other bar exam, but to get admitted on a pro hoc vice basis or a pro per case basis, if I wanted to go try a case in another state, I would have to have sponsors, attorneys from another state sponsor me pro hoc vice. I'd have to work underneath them. Their law firm would be the attorneys of record. And we are seeing that right now in the Maya Kowalski case. They brought in 2 attorneys from Baltimore from home office to help in the Maya Kowalski case in Florida, and they were admitted pro hoc vice. You have to make a motion, and then the judge will grant or deny the motion. It's usually granted because usually there's no opposition to that. So that's how that works. Let's speed this up a little bit because I do want to eventually get to the decision in this case that the judge issued yesterday that a lot of people may not know about. So let's see.
Very much. Mr. Reddington, do you want to add anything?
Okay, the judge is asking Reddington if he wants to add anything. So let me put this back on here.
Based on all of those and what I lay out in my papers, I would ask the court to deny the motion.
All right. Thank you very much. Mr. Reddington, do you want to add anything? I do have your motion to join in the opposition that was just argued by Mr. Kettlewell, but do you want to add anything to that, sir?
No, Your Honor. What I would do is basically, as I indicated in the motion, is join in on the motion, noting the objection of Jennifer McCabe, obviously asserting her privacy rights, obviously suggesting, as counsel just did, that this is a clever maneuver to try to kind of weaponize Rule 17 to turn it into a discovery motion. We all know that the September 25 meeting was about harassment and what these 2 women had been going through on the news media with the extreme harassment that they were suffering as a result of their being witnesses on a case and cooperating with the government's prosecution of Ms. Reed. So I suggest to the court that comments like the records may reveal, and they possibly would show, which is what's in the motions that's before the court, clearly shows that there's no basis, there's no factual basis to determine that these are relevant material records other than speculating that they may reveal. Just like the allegations that the photograph of the 2 young kids would be Jennifer McCabe's daughters, and they're not. And it's so frustrating for the McCabe's and everybody else because they know whose kids these are. The parents that know that they're their children, but nevertheless, they consistently suggest that this is showing that he's sitting there with these 2 kids that are the McCabe's children, and therefore, as counsel argues, this is evidence of extraordinary governmental misconduct, which is a wild accusation to be making at this point. And I suggest to the court that weaponizing Rule 17 is not proper. I join in the government's request initially objecting, and the fact that the counsel has indicated that the government basically concedes and assents and does not oppose should not interfere with Your Honor's analysis of Rule 17 as opposed to any Rule 14 or any discovery motions that would be appropriate before the court. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Do you want to respond, Mr. Jackson, before I hear briefly from the Commonwealth?
Very, very briefly. Your Honor, I would simply, to the microphone, I would simply note as to my brother's arguments, eloquent as they may be, they missed the mark. Obviously, this is relevant and admissible. Again, I don't believe that Elizabeth Proctor has standing in the court to actually argue Lampron, but since it was brought up and since that seems to be the foundation of her argument, I do want to address one point. There's a case that was cited by my brother in his moving papers called U.S. versus Abel. It's found at 469 U.S. 45. It's a 1984 case. It does not stand for the proposition that is propounded in the paperwork. Indeed, that is a federal case, not a state court case. That's the first line of distinction. Second of all, it is a mischaracterization of the holding in Abel to say that the scope of impeachment is the outer limits. The scope of impeachment is limited to the outer limits of taking the witness's word for it. And I would simply bear upon or ask the court to review the actual holding in Abel. Justice Rehnquist does not state that the scope of impeachment is limited to, quote, taking the witness at the witness's word or taking the answer of the witness, end quote. But rather, the court specifically held that it's permissible to impeach a witness by showing his or her bias. And that's all we're seeking to do. In the court's words, Justice Rehnquist's words, quote, a successful showing of bias on the part of a witness would have a tendency to make the facts to which the witness testifies less probable in the eyes of the jury than it would be without such testimony. And that's found at page 51. Contrary to counsel's misunderstanding of the holding of Abel, our impeachment of this witness is not limited to taking Jennifer McCabe's word for it. We're entitled to extrinsic evidence about her bias, about her lack of neutrality, about her attacking her credibility. This evidence is clearly relevant, it's clearly admissible, and the Commonwealth concedes as much in its opposition paperwork. And with that, I'll submit.
Mr. Catterwell, did you need to respond in any way? Okay, sure.
So I'm not going to debate Abel because the court can certainly read the case. But essentially, it's the defendant's burden to meet land prong. The defendant bears the burden to get the court to issue a subpoena and has to show all four of those factors. And it's not about whether the Commonwealth objects or does not object, and whether I have standing beyond an issue of privacy or not, which I would argue that a third party whose records are being sought certainly does. It's a question of whether they have met those elements, and they have not.
All right. Mr. Reddington, did you need to add anything to that?
No, Your Honor, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Does the Commonwealth want to argue this in any way?
Just briefly, Your Honor.
Okay.
So this is the attorney that's going to be trying the case against Alan Jackson, our smooth as butter attorney from LA. Keep that in mind.
Thank you, Your Honor. Not to belabor the point, but just to make the Commonwealth's position clear, the Commonwealth is not opposing. The Commonwealth, however, does not assent, does not concede anything as it relates to any sort of relationship or whatever is being termed as a close personal relationship. The relationship, as the Commonwealth understands it, between essentially Trooper Proctor and Ms. McCabe is that Trooper Proctor has a sister who has a friend who has a sister who has a husband who has a brother who has a wife who has a sister who is Jennifer McCabe. And it's such a
Lori, I thought your head was spinning before. Did you get all that? Remember, I have it only sped up to 1 1/4.
a close personal relationship that after apparently scouring social media, there are exactly 0 photos that counsel has produced of Ms. McCabe and Trooper Proctor pictured together at any point in time. Essentially what you have to establish this close personal relationship is a wedding party from a decade ago and some photographs of Trooper Proctor with children purported to be Ms. McCabe's children, which are not Ms. McCabe's children. But given the limited scope of what is being asked for, the Commonwealth is not opposing the motion, but would obviously request that if the court were to allow the motion, that both sides would have equal access to inspect and copy whatever screenshots are then provided by the record holders, that being the third-party witnesses. Thank you.
All right. I'll take this under advisement. Mr. Reddington, you're free to leave, but thank you for...
So she takes that under advisement, which means I'm not going to rule from the bench right now on this motion, but she does issue a decision later in the day, which we have a copy of, and we will look at together after this. The next motion, that was the motion to turn over the cell phone records, electronic evidence, Facebook Messenger messages, Instagram messages, Snapchat messages, WhatsApp messages between Elizabeth Proctor, Trooper Proctor, Jennifer McCabe. This next motion is regarding the DNA of the trooper and the sergeant, and let's see how this plays out.
For attending. You're free to stay too, but all right. So now we'll do the motion regarding the Commonwealth's motion for protective order pertaining to the DNA profiles of the investigating law enforcement officers. So I'll hear from the Commonwealth first, then I will hear from counsel for the officers, and then I'll hear the defendant's opposition. Who's arguing this for the defense?
I will be wrong.
Okay. All right. I will hear you, Mr. Lally.
So, Your Honor, just to clarify on this, just a point I think maybe misconstrued based on the defendant's opposition. This is not a situation in which these troopers have consented to anything at this point. The purpose of filing the motion was to try to gain some guidance from the court as to how mechanisms would be concerned with the collection of DNA, the retention of DNA, the destruction of DNA, and the timing in regard to that prior to obtaining either Trooper Proctor or Sergeant Buchanan's consent in relation to the taking of any bugle swab. So how this sort of arises is there is DNA reports in relation to the taillight of the defendant's vehicle. There are 3 possible contributors to that DNA mixture. One is...
Okay, I'm going to slow this down because this is important. There are 3 possible DNA contributors to the piece of taillight that was found at the scene. I don't think it was found on the first go around, but that's another question for the jury. So let's just hear what his argument is on this.
Is a DNA report in relation to the taillight of the defendant's vehicle. There are 3 possible contributors to that DNA mixture. One is positively identified as that of the victim, John O'Keefe. 2 others are unknown. There's been rampant sort of speculation, accusations levied against these particular troopers in regard to contaminating evidence or planting evidence and things of that nature. So the exploration of this is sort of caused by that, in the sense of the Commonwealth believes that whatever DNA comes back, it would exclude those 2 troopers as being contributors to the unknown sources of DNA. So what the Commonwealth is seeking, and the reason that the Commonwealth actually filed another motion asking for sort of an expedited response from the defendant, is the hope of the Commonwealth, especially with March 12th jury trial date looming, was my hope was that there would be some sort of agreement that could be come to and a joint proposal to be presented to the court so the court could act on the papers, and this testing could be well underway, if not already completed, by the time that we reached today's court date. That unfortunately was not what happened. So we received the response earlier this week from the defendant. Essentially, most of the proposals that are included within the defendant's opposition are the precise alternative proposals as far as the protocol as the Commonwealth had laid it out. So as far as the defense not wishing for anybody associated with the state lab or state police to be collecting the sample, that's fine. We had proposed Ms. Christina Owens simply because she's a civilian member of the crime scene services.
So if you didn't catch that, they are consenting. They are consenting to give the DNA of Proctor and the sergeant. Interesting twist, because they had been opposing it. I don't know if anybody expected this, but now they're saying, okay, you can have their DNA, but we want to agree on who does the sampling. We want to agree on the lab that it goes to. So this is a little twist.
This section, but if it, as long as it's a certified collector, it doesn't have to be anybody associated with that. The defendant has some issue with the state police crime lab conducting any of the testing, whether that be generating the sample or doing the comparative testing, and seems to be fine with that process proceeding at Bodie and Lorton, Virginia, where some other testing related to this case is already being done. That's fine with the Commonwealth as well. Obviously, that's going to prolong things a little bit, I would submit.
Do we know that?
I mean, what I can say is that our office would certainly be inclined to pay whatever additional fees would be necessary to expedite that testing. But as far as the time frame is concerned, I really can't say exactly how long that's going to transpire for. But as far as it seems to be sort of the main sort of point of contention is the defendant's ability or access to the actual sample. That is something I would object to, as far as, particularly in this case, I don't think there's really going to be any question that the samples or the profile that's generated is the profile of the individual troopers. It's going to be collected by an independent certified collector. It's going to be the DNA profile will be generated at an independent lab. The comparative analysis will be generated at an independent lab, and counsel would certainly have access to those DNA profiles should the defendant wish to, compare it to any other types of, any other pieces of evidence or any other, DNA that either they recovered during their evidence inspection or that was collected by the state police in regard to their investigation. So the need for the actual sample, I'm not really sure where that comes from, and the suggestion that the Commonwealth would have more access to it than the defendant would, especially if the court is inclined to go with the alternative suggestions of the independent collector.
Okay, so spoiler alert, they're going to agree that the trooper and the sergeant are going to give DNA samples. And in fact, here's the attorney for them, the trooper, and here she is. Hold on. We'll just hear a little bit of her argument.
Both parties will receive the same reports and underlying data.
She's just worried about how the samples are going to be used, what they're going to be able to be used for. That's her argument. In a nutshell.
Now or after? I mean, this is your motion. Do you want me to hear from her now?
This trial is 9 weeks away, you guys, 9 weeks away, March 12th. He says that if they send it to the state lab, it could take something like 10 to 14 weeks. And if they send it to the private lab, it could be less. But this trial is 12 weeks away, 9 weeks away. I'm sorry, it's on March 12th. So they need to expedite this, like toot sweet.
I think that's fine as far as the order's concerned.
Okay.
Gretchen Lundgren, Your Honor.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thank you for hearing from me on behalf of Sergeant Buchanan and Trooper Proctor in a discussion as their privacy interests as it relates to the Commonwealth's motion for a protective order. The proposed protective order strikes a balance between protecting the sensitive and personal DNA information of two individuals who are not alleged to have had anything to do with the death of John O'Keefe, while giving all parties access to the resulting scientific DNA analysis. The defense's opposition casts the proposed protective order as allowing the Commonwealth to obtain, test, and analyze the samples without giving them the same opportunity, but that's simply not the case. There are areas of significant agreement between the parties here. Both parties are willing to have an independent law enforcement officer obtain the DNA sample. Both parties are willing to have an independent lab develop the DNA profile and conduct the comparative analysis. Both parties will receive the same reports and underlying data. Once an independent lab develops the DNA profiles, Your Honor, there should be no need for anybody to have access to the sample thereafter. And with an independent lab conducting the comparative analysis, there should be no need for anyone to have to conduct further testing. And finally, Your Honor, once the trial is over, there should be no need for those DNA materials to be on file. And as Mr. Lally said, the legislature has provided a mechanism for obtaining third-party DNA post-conviction. So there's certainly a safety net there if the DNA is needed post-trial. Your Honor, protecting the troopers' DNA samples and profiles through these procedures.
Okay, so this argument's a little bit boring, but basically at the end, they agree and they say, okay, go give the samples right now. And that is where they go from here. She says, let's see.
As soon as possible.
Given to us December 4th. You only filed yesterday.
So what I can say, Mr. Yannetti, is that it appears that you served counsel for the Commonwealth with this motion, but you did not serve the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Is with reference to that one specific item.
So there were two other motions that were not
right to
served
know
on parties that they should have been served on. So those motions were not going to be heard yesterday. They're going to come back, I think, on January 18th at 3 p.m. for the other motions hearing regarding those two motions. They're going to go out and collect the DNA right after they left the courtroom.
That item is.
Okay, our position would be that we should be able to conduct our own investigation in private and reveal the results of those investigations, of that investigation, should we desire to. We have a different ethical duty than the Commonwealth. Clearly, if there's any evidence that the Commonwealth possesses that we'd like to do comparative testing on, we have no choice but to notify the Commonwealth and resolve any disputes before this court. But if we come into possession of anything that we believe is related to this case and should be tested, we don't believe that's any business of the Commonwealth to interject in that. We will have the profile at that point. We can do our own testing and then reveal the results of that testing should we desire to.
All right. Does the Commonwealth want to be heard?
No, Your Honor.
All right.
Maybe we have just a quick second, Your Honor.
Yep.
My co-counsel brings up a good point, which is after months and months and months of requesting access to the physical evidence, we finally appeared at the Norfolk County DA's office on December 1st of 2023 with our forensic DNA collection expert, and he did swabbings of multiple pieces of evidence. So we do have those in our possession.
All right. I had no idea what you were talking about when you were saying hypothetically.
Well, there are two separate issues. There are the items that we've swabbed that we should be able to test, and if we have the DNA profiles of these troopers, there should be nothing prohibiting us from testing them. And by the way, the Commonwealth has the ability to do the exact same testing on their own. And then if there's any other evidence, I still maintain that we should be able to do comparative testing on that as well.
All right. Let's get the samples going. Let's do that. And I'll figure out the rest of this, but let's get who do you have in mind for an independent collector?
Your Honor, I don't have anyone specific in mind, but most local police departments have at least someone who is a detective who is a certified collector. Is
there someone the defendant? The two of you work out something.
I don't have any issue with working out something with Mr. Lally.
All right, so let's do it today.
That sounds good.
All right, and Ms. Lundgren, you'll make your witnesses available immediately.
Yes, Your Honor. But I just, for sake of clarification, just trying to understand. And as Mr. Lally said, they have not provided their consent yet. They are waiting to hear what the boundaries of the proposed protective order will be in order to provide that, knowing and voluntary consent.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could certainly potentially do the samples and hold them in abeyance and not release them if the court was willing to have them destroyed should the troopers decide not to provide consent based on the bounds of the protective order. But
based on what the defense attorney just said about, we have a lot of other swabs from a lot of other pieces of evidence that we want to put these DNA profiles up against to see if they handled all of the other pieces of evidence that we have here too. So that is very interesting stuff. And it looks like they went out and they did the DNA samples yesterday, and that was the end of that. I want to go to
exempt from public disclosure.
That is the end of that for now. But I want to go to the decision on the motion so that we can go through that together and I can explain the legal aspects of that to you. Thank you for Scott McGinnis for your $10 super chat. Excited to see more and more creators covering this. Thank you from us Turtle Riders. Well, hey, listen, I don't even need to really cover the case. I can just put up all the comments that I agree with, that I know from my research, and you guys are carrying the burden here, kind of. Chrissy's like, stop the car. I need to throw up. Thank you for that super chat. Miku, anybody explain how the defendant is the one with the burden? Makes no sense. No, the defense says no burden. The defense doesn't even have to put on a case. State has a burden. State has the burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. Based on what we're seeing here, I don't know if they can do that. But hey, that's just my opinion. Street Squirrel is a new member. Kathy Chapin, everyone is saying, why didn't they go outside to check the body? But what I've heard is he never made it in the house. They were fighting and she accidentally backed into him. She was very drunk, in my opinion. And we respect all opinions here. And we do. But we're going to find out when we go into this case in more depth that there was another car that drove up behind her She stopped at the driveway. She pulled up when this car came behind her. This person, who's a non-party witness, did not go into the house, but he says that when he drove by her car, he saw her sitting alone in her car with her hands at 10 and 2 and the interior light on. So there's so much to this case, Kathy. And that's what you heard? Yeah, you have to really dig into it, I think, to try and figure it out for yourself. That's what they're saying, and that's their story, and that's what they're sticking to right now. But I think as more evidence comes out, there's no tire tracks in the snow. There's no crime scene ever set up outside the house where they find the body. Nothing's roped off. They do a first sweep of the crime scene at 6 a.m. when they find the body, and then they do, another one at 6 p.m.? 12 hours go by. The time when his body was found, there was 2 inches of snow on the ground. When they came back at 6 p.m., there was more than a foot of snow. And then all of a sudden, the taillight pieces are on top of the snow. And then a month later, they find some more taillight pieces, just coincidentally. Just the whole thing. I'm not even talking about my lawyer brain, because my lawyer brain works in overdrive. I'm thinking of just as a reasonable juror, someone from the bus stop, if you will, a bus stop person. Right. How does he have a cocktail glass next to him? No, well, yeah, that's the thing too. Why did they never go in the house to see if they had those kind of glasses in the house? They never searched the house at all. It's just, hi, Sleuthy. Hey, Sleuthy is here. Everyone should check out her amazing spreadsheet on Excel. I did look at your Google Drive. I'm using some of the documents, so I hope you don't mind. But you are putting them out there, and you're amazing. If you're not an attorney admitted in Massachusetts, you can't access the court documents. Yeah, that was the F off Tom Gill. God, Tom Gill is a golf instructor. I play golf. I had a hole in one once. I swear. 116 yards with an 8-iron. I got my name on a plaque in the clubhouse. Yes, that's true. The F off Beverly at the beginning was something else. Yeah, it sure was. It sure was. But in the meantime, let us look at the decision on this case. This was issued yesterday after end of day. In fact, I knew about this decision when I was on Court TV last night, but I did not have the chance to pop in there and tell them there was a decision. Here it is. I don't like the way this scrolls. Okay. And I will read it to you in my best ASMR voice. This is in the case Commonwealth versus Karen Reed, memorandum of decision and order on defendant's motion for order pursuant to Massachusetts Rule of Criminal Procedures 17, directed to Jennifer McCabe, Trooper Michael Proctor, and Elizabeth Proctor. Under Massachusetts Criminal Procedure Rule 17A2, the court may issue a summons ordering a third party to produce, quote, books, papers, documents, or other objects, end quote, prior to trial. In deciding a defendant's motion pursuant to Rule 17A2, the court must balance the defendant's right to mount a defense with the Commonwealth's right to prevent unnecessary delay of the trial and unwarranted harassment of witnesses and third parties. Citing Commonwealth v. Lamb. To succeed on a Rule 17 motion, the defendant must establish good cause by showing, and this is quoting from the case, 1, that the documents are evidentiary and relevant. 2, that they are not otherwise procurable reasonably in advance of trial by exercise of due diligence. 3, that the party cannot properly prepare for trial without such production and inspection in advance of trial, and that the failure to obtain such inspection may tend unreasonably to delay the trial. And 4, that the application is made in good faith and is not intended as a general fishing expedition. Citing Commonwealth versus Lampron, which is the case that we heard Lally referring to several times, and the other attorneys as well, during the argument of this particular motion. The defendant, Karen Reed, is charged with various crimes, including murder in the second degree of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, who was found unresponsive in the snow outside a residence in Canton on the morning of January 29th, 2022. She moves for an order pursuant to Massachusetts Rule of Criminal Procedure 17, seeking electronic communications from Elizabeth Proctor, Trooper Michael Proctor, and Jennifer McCabe. After consideration of the parties' written submissions, oral arguments, and the requirements of Rule 17, the court makes the following ruling. As to Elizabeth Proctor, the defendant's Rule 17 motion is denied. The defendant seeks communications between Elizabeth Proctor and Jennifer McCabe. The defendant's motion fails to meet the Lampron requirements. The defendant has not shown that communication sought from Elizabeth Proctor, who is not a proposed witness in this case, would yield relevant, admissible evidence for trial. As to Trooper Proctor, the motion is allowed. The defendant seeks communications between Trooper Proctor and Jennifer McCabe, and Trooper Proctor and Brian and/or Nicole Albert. While the Commonwealth does not concede that Trooper Proctor and these individuals had any close personal relationships, it does not oppose the motion as to Trooper Proctor. As to Jennifer McCabe, who is also a proposed government witness in this case, the motion is allowed in part and denied in part. The defendant seeks communications between Jennifer McCabe and Trooper Proctor, and Jennifer McCabe and Elizabeth Proctor. As to communication with Elizabeth Proctor, the motion does not meet the Lampron requirements. However, where Jennifer McCabe and Trooper Proctor are both proposed government witnesses in this case, the records sought by the defendant as to them satisfy Rule 17. Accordingly, summonses will issue directing the following. Number 1, Jennifer McCabe to produce all communications, including but not limited to records of calls, text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, and any other third-party messaging applications and or email correspondence between Jennifer McCabe and Trooper Michael Proctor between January 21, 2022 and the present. That's a big deal. Could be a big deal. Could be nothing. Could be a big deal. Number 2, Trooper Michael Proctor to produce all communications, including but not limited to records of calls, text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, and any other third-party messaging applications and or email correspondence between Trooper Proctor and Jennifer McCabe between January 29th, 2022 and the present. And B, all communications, including but not limited to records of calls, text messages, Facebook messages, Instagram messages, and any other third-party messaging applications and or email correspondence between Trooper Proctor and Brian Albert and Trooper Proctor and Nicole Albert between January 29th, 2022 and February 18th of 2022. I don't know why that is limited to less than a 1-month period, but it is. So ordered. Judge Beverly Canone, Justice of the Supreme Court. This was dated yesterday, January 5th. Could be explosive, could be nothing. What say you, my friends? What say you? Let's go to the chat for a minute. I need to be the mommy Uber in a very short period of time, so we are going to try and rip through this before we come back and start from the very beginning with the probable cause affidavit and all the other interesting things we're going to talk about. I think I do agree with the decision with regard to Elizabeth Proctor. If she's not a witness, it's kind of hard. You have to draw the line of where you can allow discovery, and that might have been the right line to draw. But now that the FBI is involved in this investigation, everyone's dotting their I's and crossing their T's, unlike some of the other cases that we've seen. Kurt, you just disrupted my train of thought. I was like, what was I trying to say? It's my ADHD and, short-term memory loss and all that good stuff. Yeah, Justice of the Supreme Court is ruling on evidentiary issues in the middle of a trial. It's not on trial. They're not on trial. The trial doesn't start until March 12th. So this is all pretrial stuff. And the expert that the defense hired to go through Jennifer McCabe's phone originally found a lot of deleted searches and a lot of deleted calls and a lot of deleted stuff. So all of that is coming in. And now we're going to get at the communications between Jennifer McCabe and Michael Proctor, who was the lead investigator from the Massachusetts State Police on this case. Says Laura, I bet she has been communicating through Elizabeth Proctor for this reason. We don't know. We do not know. We cannot speculate. She deleted the 911 call even, Mark, huh? Yeah, it could be explosive. You think John Reagan, you think it's going to be explosive? Melanie Schuyler, but they don't even know each other. I know, right? Oh, the Commonwealth. Lisa Graham, the Commonwealth hasn't been doing their job the entire time. The feds are on it, right? And now everything is going to have to be turned over. Thank you. Eileen Rose, Amy in Boston, wrong. Storm was late until 8 a.m. the next day. The only dusting at midnight and 2 inches at 8 a.m. That's the evidentiary base. That's the weather records I found as well. And then I think another foot of snow fell, right? Before 6 p.m. when they went back. Yeah, I was wondering about burner phones too, H-Bag. I totally was wondering about burner phones because Rex Heuermann had a lot of burner phones. And I'm on Long Island where police corruption is very, very well known to us. So, I don't know. Let's go back to the, thank you, Christy Hughes, for your super sticker. I appreciate you. And to all the new members, congratulations and welcome, welcome, welcome to the membership. We are very happy to have all of the new members, Lynn Vanderwall, Mermaid, Mary B, Lynch, Carrie H. Welcome to Melanie's Little Cupcakes. I am not a cupcake. That's my logo because this is not a neutral channel. I have opinions. I can't make everyone happy. I'm not a cupcake. But my members are cupcakes to me, and I to them. I'm the queen cupcake because we make each other happy by talking about the tough topics and not being afraid to expose the truth. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Send Chili to Long Island. He'll fix it. Who's Chili? Yeah, I agree, Stacey. Burner phones are definitely consciousness of guilt, in my humble opinion. Yeah, everyone's got the weather records. I know. Kurt's a cupcake. Kurt is a cupcake. Makes everyone happy by breaking their spirits, so they agree with me. Nah. You listen, Kurt, you have really excellent knowledge of the law. When I know we need to know about the law, I come to you. Come to you because you know the law. You discuss Supreme Court cases, the U.S. Supreme Court cases, like no other YouTuber. That is the truth. Yeah, Kirsten, there's no sarcasm on this channel. It's just snark. It is just snark. Yep. Dave, dog gone, basement gone, floor gone, swimming pool gone, finally the home gone. Nothing to see here. Nothing to see here, folks. Move along, move along, move along. Yeah, so, I brought all that up last night on Court TV. If you didn't see it, rewind back to the beginning of the stream. We watched my Court TV appearance together, although they did cut off the last part where I really clapped back at Ms. Coffendorfer, and I'm glad that nobody is saying anything. They're not defaming her in the chat, and I appreciate you because my mods are amazing, and we try to keep it classy here. We just try to keep it classy because there are so many very mean places on YouTube that we do not want to be one of them. We want to be a safe place for people to talk and express their opinions. And if you have a difference of opinion, that's fine. Just express it respectfully. And I love to read the comments and I love to respond to the comments as long as they're respectful. If they're not and they're trash talking or cursey wordy, they just get deleted or blocked, or you can't put links in there. But come for me in the comments. Come for me. I have merch that says it here. I linked it. Come for me in the comments as long as you do it in a respectful way. Come for me in the comments, and I am not a cupcake. We're going to have to maybe make some merch on this case. Not sure what it's going to say yet. Free Karen Reed isn't my slogan, so I don't think I will do that. But yeah, sarcasm is every New Yorker's love language. Thank you. Who said that? Hold on. You're moving quick, Carrie. You're moving quick. I can't get to you. With Skoda. Sarcasm is every New Yorker's love language. Yep. Truth. Yes. No, Brooklyn Paisola. Guess what? There was a guy in the police department across the street. Wait, I wrote it down. I took a lot of notes today. I took tons and tons and tons of notes. And he was with Canton Police Department, I believe. And his ring camera footage would have showed the exact place where the body was found. But he told law enforcement that there was nothing on the ring camera footage that would be important. So they never subpoenaed it. And it's just gone. You guys can, since I can't go through my notes and pay attention to you at the same time, tell me who that neighbor was across the street. I believe he was with Canton PD. He may even be the chief or the deputy chief of Canton PD, but his ring camera footage just Wasn't important, so he didn't turn it over, and such is life. If they actually had footage of Karen hitting John, they would have turned it over. Yes, Brooklyn Paizola, we're from New York. We know what goes on around here. We know what goes on around these parts. Families protecting families, all in the family. Nobody has cement shoes, right? No food for the fishes. No horse heads in the bed. None of that stuff happens, right? Just doesn't happen. It's so far beyond any comprehension that it could ever happen. Thanks, Joanne Byer, for your super sticker. You're always very generous, and I really appreciate you. Thank you, J1C80. You were amazing on Court TV last night. It's nice to see someone being, I tried. And I want to say that I had watched, my clap back to cough was, I said, thank you, Mad Chatter, for asking and for your super chat. I said, because she said, everyone who isn't even a medical examiner, I'm not going to do that voice. Everyone who isn't even a medical examiner or has a PhD is coming in and looking at these pictures, and all of a sudden they're an expert on how these are not dog scratches. These did not come from a dog. And she goes on and on about tissue samples being sent. And P.S., they were not. The tissue samples were lost. They were never taken. Yeah, everything's just gone, Kirsten. Exactly. So in my closing thoughts, Vinny said, and you don't get the questions ahead of time, so you don't know what he's going to ask and exactly what they're going to talk about. But, I sit here for 2 hours and talk to you guys. Like, this is not scripted. He said, what do you think, Melanie, the most damaging piece of evidence in this case is going to be? And because I wanted to clap back at her for pretty much, dissing me, because I said that I thought that those were animal scratches or German Shepherd dog scratches, I said, well, and not exactly in this way, but I'm not a medical doctor and I'm not a PhD. But in my 30-year legal career as a trial attorney, I have handled hundreds, if not thousands, of motor vehicle accident cases. And what I can tell you for sure is that the injuries to John O'Keefe's right arm did not come from a low-impact motor vehicle accident, pedestrian versus car. That I can tell you with absolute certainty. So yeah, that's what my clapback was, and that's how it ended. Hopefully they're gonna post the entire video on YouTube at some point today. So yeah, there's that. False start. Convenient power outages and storage centers, fires in the evidence room, floods in the archives. Totally normal. You don't have to be a carpenter to see that a table is crooked. Yeah, there's 2 minutes of video missing from here's Jack coming in with the deets. There's 2 minutes of video missing from the library, I believe, surveillance camera that would have shown Karen driving back to the house that she was living in with John O'Keefe. Yeah. And there's 2 minutes, just 2 minutes of that video are missing, which is even a little bit more suspicious. Just me sitting here as a licensed attorney for 30 years, but also as a regular good old bus stop juror who lives in small town Massachusetts, where everyone knows what's been going on with this police department for the last decades, right? This is like Murdoch deep, you guys. It's like Murdoch deep, this town. And, they're thick as thieves there. And we know because we're from New York, so we understand how something like this could happen. That's why I can't understand all of these other shows saying, this could never happen. You'd have to believe that 100 people were involved in this conspiracy. Well, not really. No. Thank you, Missy. LFG. That's right. I don't like the cursey words, and I appreciate your abbreviations. Crystal DeSaro, just because I disagree with Jennifer C, I'm grateful for what you said to her doesn't mean I have ill feelings towards her. No, listen, she's somebody's got to be on the other side, I guess. And Vinny knew what side I was on because we discussed it on Profiling Evil, so he knew that I was gonna come in with some receipts and some information and some opinions, and I did. I'm not afraid. Janelle, I held my tongue really well. I would have been kicked off the show. Yeah. Yes, it was a mic drop, Tracy Violet. It was a mic drop. Hello, Olivia. Conover conveniently doesn't cite the fact that M.E. Sheridan, the former San Bernardino M.E. with expertise in identifying dog bites and wounds, who testified that the arm wounds were from a dog. Yes, because they had to go to California, right, to get an independent M.E. to look at all of this information to make heads or tails of it. Nope. I think as Sleazy Goosey, you are on it, girl. You are so on it. Your document dump is awesome. I do not think the 2 minutes of Canton Library footage have surfaced yet. If anybody has any information, contact Sleuthy Goosey. Or are those 2 minutes still mysteriously missing? I still believe they are missing. Thank you. Mic drop. Lala Me, you saw that part, yeah? I don't know. They cut it off when they put it on the Court TV website. They cut that part out at the very end. It was my best work, you guys, because I did say, John Proctor, I apologize profusely. It's live TV. My bad. It was terrible. Proctor's living in my head rent-free when I meant to say John O'Keefe. So please don't come for me about that. It was a blatant error on my part. Thanks, Galen. That's right. If you know your stuff, you don't need a script. Yeah, except for like I said. The thing, Brooklyn Basil, these cops get caught covering up a murder. The whole state's going to be forced to implement changes that none of these cops would want to deal with. That's why 100 men would be complicit. I don't even think it's 100. I think it's family. I don't know that they even interviewed every single person who was in that house. Does anybody have the answers to that? Did they interview the non-party friends that were in the house? Those kids, they're kids. I mean, they're children, they're adult children, but they could have been in a different room. I don't know. I don't know. Were they all interviewed? They did not. Soup Kid says they did not. So who did they interview? Just Brian and Nicole and Jen McCabe and her husband? Are those the only people who give interviews? Because I have questions. Why weren't those other people interviewed? No, they did not. Huh? How do you not interview every single person who's in that house? Okay, now I even have more questions. Now there's even more reasonable doubt. HBOG, really? They didn't interview everyone? Scott, you don't think that all those people would? Well, no, not if they're only taking the word of 4 people. What about all the other people who were in the house? Yeah, they didn't even investigate inside the house. They never went inside the house at all. The police officer who owns the house never even came outside. When a person who he invited to his house the night before is dead on his front lawn, a police officer, another police officer, another Boston PD officer is dead on his lawn. He never even comes out. So bizarre. It is so bizarre. I have questions too. I have questions. The fact that they didn't even look in the house, let alone actually investigate anything inside. I have a lot of questions, you guys. This is, as we say in New York, fakakta. This is fakakta. It's fakakta. It's crazy. It's a mishigas. And we're going to get into it deeper. So, yeah, you're so lost, Ed. I'll come back later tonight or tomorrow and start from the beginning. Smash that. Put your DNA on that like button, folks. Please subscribe. It's free. Hit the bell so you'll be notified when I go live, because I am a mother of 5. I don't always schedule my lives far in advance. It could be an hour or 2, and you will get the notification because you just don't want to miss out. You just don't want to miss out. So do that stuff. Some were not even interviewed until 2023. After they are being discussed in certain news media articles. This happened when? January 29th of 2022. This is a very quick trial, you guys. A year and 14 months from date of accident, date of crime to trial. That's fast. Yeah. How do you not go in the house? Yeah, exactly, Amy. They were interviewed together at Jen McCabe's house, not at the house where the scene of the crime happened. Nope, not there. Nobody went in the house at all. Nobody went in the house at all. I have questions. I don't know. Thank you guys for coming by, spending some of your Saturday, January 6th with me from all over the world and all over the country. I'm going to go be a mommy Uber right now, but please continue the conversation in the comments, because we're not done with this case. We are just scratching the surface of this case. See what I did there? We're just scratching the surface of this case, and we're going to come back for more. Thank you to my moderators who are so amazing. Best mods on YouTube. I know it probably wasn't easy tonight because there's a lot of people here and a lot of opinions here. So thank you for doing what you do and doing it the best. My channel members, my viewers, my replay viewers. Remember, be cool, be kind, be classy. It's not hard. It is not hard, you guys. Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for your last minute super stick. You're getting in there. Oh, thanks for loving my channel. Hopefully we got some new viewers tonight. And we are just scratching and biting the surface of this very, very mysterious case. And listen, if this can happen, perhaps, maybe to Karen Reed, I'm not even saying that there's definitely a cover up and that she definitely didn't do it or anything else, but think about if this was you or your daughter or your wife. Maybe they were all hammered. Maybe they were. Doesn't mean she backed into him. Doesn't mean she intentionally hit him and intentionally try and kill him. And now she's being charged with murder. I don't know, guys. Just think about it. A lot of it doesn't make sense to me as a reasonable person. Let me know what you think. Peace. I'll see you soon.